We would like to call to order our September the 6th, 2022 school board meeting of the Lynchburg City Schools, and we certainly want to say to all of those who are in person and those who are watching us virtually that we are so thankful that you are giving us some of your time that we might deliberate on matters that impact the quality of life for our kids and community. With that in mind, we would like to now call our meeting to order. And members of the board, Section B1, there is a request for the approval of electronic participation by a school board member. And so at this time, the chair does recognize that Anthony Andrews has requested for personal reasons to participate in our meeting tonight virtually, which is in compliance with our policy. And a motion would be in order at this time to approve the electronic participation of school board member Anthony Andrews.
So moved.
I second.
It's been moved by Dr. Sinha, seconded by Mr.
Mrs.
Oh, excuse me, thank you. Been moved by Ms. Preston and seconded then by Ms. Dr. Sinha, I will say.
No. Mr. Trust.
All right, well, I was calling it in the order I thought I heard, but that'd be fine. We're going to go with the motion from School Board Member Preston and the second by Mr. Trost for the electronic participation in our meeting tonight of Anthony Andrews. Any further questions or discussion on this matter? Hearing none, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
School Board Member Ms. Preston.
Yes.
School Board Member Mr. Charles.
Yes.
School Board Member Dr. Sinha.
Yes.
School Board Member Dr. Brennan.
Yes.
School Board Member Dr. Coleman.
Yes.
School Board Member Dr. Carter.
Yes.
School Board Member Dr. Gupta.
Yes.
School Board Member Dr. Day.
Yes.
And School Board Member Mr. Andrews.
Yes.
All right. Thank you, board, for approving that. Let me turn around here and see our distinguished board member. Mr. Andrews, please feel free. You are equally a participant in this meeting. Now, some of my colleagues will help me because when I'm facing this direction, I can't necessarily see when you're wanting to. But please, the chair will certainly recognize you as you feel a need to participate. Thank you, sir. All right. You're more than welcome. All right, now, the agenda has been featured on board docs, and we do want our public to know that our board meeting agenda is featured on board docs before the board members. This has been before you. Is there a motion to approve the agenda for tonight's board meeting as provided tonight?
I move that we approve the board meeting as provided.
Thank you, Dr. Carter. It's the motion, seconded by Dr. Brennan. Any further questions or discussion on the approval of the agenda? Hearing none, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
School Board Member Ms. Preston.
Yes.
School Board Member Mr. Trost.
Yes.
School Board Member Dr. Sinha.
Yes.
School Board Member Dr. Brennan.
Yes.
School Board Member Dr. Carter. Excuse me, Dr. Coleman.
Yes.
School Board Member Dr. Carter.
Yes.
School Board Member Dr. Gupta.
Yes.
School Board Member Dr. Day.
Yes.
And School Board Member Mr. Andrews.
Thank you.
Yes.
Motion carries. All
right, we're going to now stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, and let's do that. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you so much. That is such a fitting opportunity we have to do that in every meeting. And hearts and minds are certainly with so many across our nation in Jackson, Mississippi, and all of the challenges that are before people. And we certainly are thankful for our abilities to be supportive where possible. Section D, now we will move to special presentation. And it is the honor of this board to pause for just a moment and recognize a very special person. This is a special presentation for Mrs. Jodi Gillette. And so we're going to ask now that Mrs. Gillette would come forward to the podium. And this is an honor for us. Mrs. Gillette, I'm going to first make an attempt at reading a resolution from this board to you. And following that reading and presentation of this resolution to you, Dr. Edwards will follow with some other expressions of our deep appreciation for your service. A resolution of commendation and appreciation to Mrs. Jodi Gillette for her years of service as the Executive Director of the Lynchburg City School Education Foundation, Inc., presented by the Lynchburg City School Board, September the 6th, 2022. Mrs. Jodi Gillette, a champion crusader for public education in the city of Lynchburg, has worked diligently as the Executive Director of the Lynchburg City Schools Education Foundation for a total of 12 and a half years. In a true labor of love, she has been innovative, collaborative, and amazingly effective in her tireless efforts to enhance the educational programs provided for students by Lynchburg City Schools. This objective was fulfilled as she led the Education Foundation through advocacy and educational funding. As an organizational genius, Mrs. Gillette always communicated the need to look ahead to ensure success around every detail of each program she presented. Her vivacious spirit and articulate expressions of hope always warmed each venue where our students, families, staff, and community members gathered to promote our schools. The result of each Education Foundation event was a myriad of phenomenal reviews expressing the high quality of the experience by those in attendance. With this resolution, the Lynchburg City School Board pays tribute to Mrs. Jodi Gillette, a person of excellence and integrity who, by example, made valuable and far-reaching contributions to public education in Lynchburg, Virginia. Whereas Mrs. Jodi Gillette served with distinction as Executive Director of the Lynchburg Education Foundation, Inc. for 12 and a half years, whereas Mrs. Gillette endeavored to promote the advancement and further the aims and purposes of the Lynchburg City Schools through the development and application of financial resources, whereas Mrs. Gillette consistently planned and attended events and programs such as the LCS Education Breakfast with the Superintendent, LCS Education Foundation Senior Honors Dinner, Strubant's Excel Scholarship Reveal, the LCS Scholarship for Science or Engineering founded by Dr. Charles and Mary Jane Pryor, Tools for Schools and Classroom Innovation Grants, and LCS Fabulous Morning of Wellness. Whereas Mrs. Gillette worked with our LCS School Board liaisons to the Education Foundation to foster greater understanding of the work of the Education Foundation to benefit all students and teachers. And whereas Mrs. Gillette is now the new Executive Director for the Central Virginia Community College Educational Foundation, be it resolved that the Lynchburg City School Board of Lynchburg, Virginia takes pride in the excellent service that Mrs. Jodi Gillette rendered to the operation and successes of the public schools of this community, and be it resolved that the Lynchburg City School Board of Lynchburg, Virginia hereby affirms in appreciation to Mrs. Jodi Gillette for 12 and a half years of devoted service to public education, during which she demonstrated courage and tenacity in the pursuit of educational excellence. Her numerous contributions will affect generations to come. The Lynchburg City School Board, as we all now stand, wishes to commend Mrs. Jodi Gillette for the quality of her leadership on behalf of the city of Lynchburg, Virginia. Come join me, Bob. And this is being presented to you by myself, the chair of the board, alongside with Vice Chair Dr. Brennan and our Superintendent, Dr. Crystal Edwards. Thank you, thank you, thank you for your amazing.
So you may be seated. So this is my favorite time because all of you know that when Jodi comes up to the podium, all she does is celebrate someone else, right? Whether it's Strubant's, whether it's a scholarship, whether it's talking about the Ed Foundation programs. It's very rare that you're up there quiet being celebrated yourself. So this is a wonderful moment for us to just pause and say thank you, thank you, thank you. And for those of you who don't know, the behind-the-scenes work, and you were part-time on paper, right? But full-time in mission, all the time. The behind-the-scenes work that she has done to do something awesome. And there's no greater gift than a great memory. And you have created so many memories for students, families, teachers, staff, everybody. It has just been a wonderful contribution that you have had. And we tried our best to kind of package the effect that you've had on us into a basket of just memories for you. And we can't thank you enough for your tireless efforts here at Lynchburg City Schools. And I told you this before when I first came down, when you started talking about all of the programs that you do as an Ed Foundation, my jaw dropped. I'm like, wow, wow. I don't know if you know how impressive you really are. And the work that you have done has really been, when you just compare yourselves to other Ed Foundations that don't have the leadership that you demonstrated. And just all of the ways that you've helped us meet needs, whether that was clothing needs, financial needs, recruitment needs. You've always been there for us. We could count on you and depend on you. We're halfway crying, but you are going to CVCC, so we're sending you a lot of students that way and families as well, so we know we're in good hands and you're still serving this community. I would not want to be the Ed Foundation president right now trying to replace you, because that is a tremendous, tremendous job. But we just wanted to say thank you, and we hope that we've made enough memories for you, like you've made for us here, and for every staff, student, family member, teacher, community member, and beyond. You truly were our and beyond when we talk about every child by name and by need to graduation and beyond. So thank you. Yes, thank you for bringing Mr. Gillette.
And certainly we would like for you to make some comments, and then if you'd like to make a comment.
I do, can I grab them?
Sure. And then we'll get a picture, yeah. This is one, give her another hand.
Well, thank you, Dr. Coleman, and I promise I'm going to be very brief. I'm impressed that you could read all of that with your glasses on, because that writing's pretty small, but my writing's big here, and I won't take long at all. But I want to thank everybody who's here this evening, the school board, for being here tonight, and I really do appreciate your kind words, and I am humbled by this honor. It has been, as you captured, so I guess I have said this, and maybe you all have actually believed it, a true labor of love. To build on the vision established by the founders of the LCS Education Foundation and the platform that was established by my predecessor, Bob Dozier, to nurture this organization into the thriving education foundation LCS has today. Lynchburg is a tremendously generous community that values education. It has been a true privilege to harness significant private investment from corporations, foundations, and individuals to support pilot projects and secure sustainable funding for programs that encourage innovation in teachers and advance the educational experience of LCS students, well beyond what public dollars would provide. As education foundations grow across the country and private entities further understand the power of their investment, I believe that we have revealed just the tip of our collaborative potential and look forward to seeing how the foundation continues to increase its impact on public education far into the future. The LCS Education Foundation would not be where it is today without the leadership of many trustees over the years, the dedication of LCS faculty and administrators, and the numerous relationships built with our business community, whose leaders take time to learn about the needs of our school division and understand the important role that they play as they invest in the future of our children. I sincerely, truly enjoyed working with everyone. It's been a large and mighty team, and I'm so happy I had the opportunity to play. Thank you.
Wow. else have anything? I don't want to leave anybody out. All right. Thank you so much, Mrs. Gillette, for so well-deserved this appreciation from us to you today. And we thank you for all that you continue to do.
Ms. Reed wants to take a picture.
Okay, we do want to take a picture? Yes. So we're going to, tell us how what we're going to do, how we're going to do it. Yeah, come on in the horseshoe. Ms. Gillette, if you could, we bother you one more time to come up here and take a picture with us.
Just get off the board members. And then you can be up front.
This looks like excellence.
Do you want this or not want this?
Yes. Okay.
Everybody right here.
All right, thank you, Jodi. Thank you. Wow. All right, this is what we do in Lynchburg City Schools. We appreciate those who have labored in a true labor of love. We will now move on to D2, which is special recognition, in another very deserved way for our Scholar Identity Institute. Dr. Edwards.
Absolutely. So, Dr. Jones and Dr. Cardwell approached us with this idea of a scholarly identity model right here in Lynchburg. And if you know Dr. Jones and Dr. Cardwell, you know you can't say no to them in terms of the work that they want to do for our community. We just celebrated Ms. Gillette for all of her contributions to our community, and we have two other pillars in our community who help us meet the needs of our students. So I'm going to invite them up to talk a little bit about the program, followed by a student participant in the program and a parent's view of the program. And this might answer the question that you all have about what are you all doing in this community to bridge the access, opportunity, achievement gaps. And these two young men are doing a lot of work to help us open doors, develop mentorships, partnerships, and really do some creative things for the young men in our community. So Dr. Cardwell.
Dr. Edwards, Dr. Coleman, school board members, thank you for inviting us to share a bit about the Scholar Identity Institute that we hope will become an annual affair. A former Roselle Schule lecturer, speaker, Dr. Gil Whiting from Vanderbilt University, was here prior to COVID and talked about this scholar identity model, which focuses primarily on African American and Hispanic males who generally identify as either musicians, entertainers, sports celebrities, or unfortunately in this culture, sometimes gang members. And so we were impressed with his presentation when he was here. Dr. Jones continued in conversation with him. COVID got in the way and we had to postpone it. But I'll let Dr. Jones talk about the journey that got us to, I think it was ultimately 23 participants from Heritage and EC Glass High School.
Thanks, Dr. Cardwell, and thanks to all of you for the opportunity. As some of you know, this is my 52nd year connected to public education in some way, including 32 years with Lynchburg City Schools. And in all of that time, I've had an opportunity to see a lot, to engage in a lot, and to see learning experiences as they unfold. I have never in 52 years seen a better learning experience than the week that we had this summer with Dr. Gil Whiting and with 23 young men from EC Glass and Heritage High Schools. They engaged in the process, and Dr. Whiting's research that has develop 9 constructs that go from self-efficacy to focusing on the future to a focus on achievement. Basically revolves around the concept that if you want students to really change their mindset and grow, you need to give them a construct or some kind of framework from which to operate. Dr. Whiting did that this summer. The students engaged for over half of the day. And then in the afternoons, we created some leadership experiences, including an opportunity for 6 graduates of EC Glass and Heritage High Schools to join us either in person or online, virtually, to talk with students about their journey, how they got from sitting in, conceptually at least, the same seats at EC Glass and Heritage High Schools, although in a different building, most of them, and how they navigated that. Students had some really deep questions, and we had a variety we had a 30-year veteran from the Lynchburg Police Department. We had a young man who, young African, all of them were African-American males, but who owns his own financial company. We had the head coach at University of Lynchburg, and we had the first African-American head of the Virginia Bar Association, who happens to be Vic Cardwell, a graduate of Heritage High School. They did an exceptional job. And we will continue that support. The high school principals, Tim Beatty and Rose Flora, the high school guidance directors, were phenomenal in helping us do this. The schools identified the students. And we will continue to follow up. We did a strength-based assessment because our entire focus is strength-based leadership, not deficit-based leadership, not weakness-based leadership, but identifying strengths. Dr. Cardwell and I will continue to work with these students during the year about how to develop their talents that have been identified and how to grow those into strengths. We will also, fortunately, with the 2 high school principals' help, there are mentors at both high schools who will work with those students, who will meet with them on a regular basis, maintain constant contact with them. We'll continue to follow that. Dr. Whiting has given all of them his phone number and his, and they're able to text him, they're able to go online, talk with him, and a lot of them have. And it was a phenomenal experience. As Dr. Cardwell said, our goal is to expand that next summer. This was the pilot for us. We appreciate the support from Lynchburg City Schools, and we hope to continue that. Students did not pay a thing for the program, and fortunately, Dr. Morrison Shetler found ways from the university perspective to support this. And we'll continue to look for ways to continue it next year. But you would be proud of those 23 young men. Their families were proud. They made themselves proud, and both high schools proud. This community has a great future with 23 young men developing their leadership the way they did this summer, and we appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you. We have one of the 23 that I had the pleasure of meeting at the dinner and was just totally blown away by this young man. I think we all were when we were talking to him. And then as we were thinking about putting this together, we could have very well done a PowerPoint and put up some information. And, you know, we really thought the power of testimony, right? Mm-hmm. Testimony rich.
Yes.
Why should we tell it? Let's let Nathaniel Dillard and his mom tell it as they experienced it so that the community can really understand the benefit of the work that was done here. So no pressure, Nathaniel. But we know you got this because you were demonstrating some leadership skills already.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. As you know, my name is Nathan Dillard, and this is my mother, Miss Kimberly Dillard. This summer, over the past 5 days, I went to the Scholar Identity Institute at the University of Lynchburg. And what Dr. Whiting taught me was these three things: to believe in myself and have the will to not give up on yourself and on others. And he also told me to stop using the word can't and start using the word can. And he taught us physically, mentally, and financially about plenty of things over this summer. And he also told me to chase my goals on what I want to do. And what I want to do is for this program to last. And I also want to meet new people like I did this summer. Met amazing people this summer, you know? And I just want to say thank you that they invited me on this program. And I just want to say thank you all for listening. Thank you.
Wow.
Good evening, I'm Kimberly Dillard, and I am overwhelmed with the kinship and love that the city of Lynchburg has shown us. I'm holding up this beautiful pilot certificate that was presented to our family. This is our family, and we do have family watching in Tidewater. Good evening, everyone. I just wanted very briefly to thank this village, and I'm turning all the way around because each one of you has had some part in my life. I've been back in Lynchburg for 20 years. Dr. Jones is my principal. Dr. Cardwell went to school with some of my elder siblings. I can go around. It's a blessing, Dr. Cardwell, that you're able to come full circle and help my son. So I just want to thank you all. This program, if there's anything that I can do to volunteer to assist, Nathan definitely, as an 11th grader at EC Glass, is happy to help with the program if you all consider continuing it. I cannot go around the table and thank each of you all that are in the village. Even on screen there is Nathan's coach, Andrew. So being here for the past 20 years, returning after finishing EC Glass High School has been a blessing. And I just wanted very briefly to mention, introducing myself to Dr. Edwards, Dr. Coleman. Dr. Edwards I met at the back to school dinner for the Institute. I went up and approached her, wonderful, wonderful part of a village, and wanted to thank her because Nathan and I are pretty much the family that we have here in town. And my family's in Tidewater. As I said, they're watching online. But we don't have to live in Lynchburg, but I choose Lynchburg for the education for my son.
Gracious.
We were all educated in the Lynchburg city schools. I see my teachers and some students and such. But I want Nathan to get a good quality education, and we feel very nurtured here. You know, my son is safe, and like Dr. Whiting taught us very briefly, I will tell you, the hierarchy of needs. I provide food and shelter and things of that nature for Nathan to be comfortable, but you all are providing the love and the support that he needs to have that sponge of a mind of his just soak up every little thing that Lynchburg has to offer. So I want to thank you all, have a wonderful evening, and thank you for allowing us to stop in this evening after work and school. Thank
I am absolutely speechless. I'm going to have to ask Dr. Brennan to chair the rest of this meeting. This is just amazing. Both presentations, absolutely incredible. I attended this institute, and it is everything that has been stated. We would be delighted also to take a picture with the two distinguished gentlemen from University of Lynchburg, as well as mom and son, to come up and take a picture with the board, please, at this time. You want to know what Lynchburg City Schools is all about and its partnerships. Here it is. We want to thank Amy Pugh also for all of her help with helping with this project. Thank you.
She just walked in.
Okay, everybody, you all complete. Right here. 1, 2, 3.
Thank
All right.
Thank
so
you.
much.
Thanks, Nate.
Wow.
Oh, yes, sir. Thank you.
All right. Wow.
I am here. I'm sorry.
Wow.
I'm so used to sitting over here.
We will now move into our public comment. And such a great picture. Our chief academic officer greeted the young man and all of this. This is just a wonderful showing of what we are about and what we can do and what this year is going to bring. We will now move to public comments for tonight, and as you know, public comments is a part of what we do. Persons appearing before the school board will not be allowed to campaign for public office or promote private business ventures, and should not use profanity or vulgar language or gestures, make comments about a public official or an employee that are not related to their official duties, engage in behavior that disrupts the meeting or intimidates others, or address the school board on issues that do not concern the services, policies, role, and/or responsibilities of the school board. Individual speakers shall limit their comments to 3 minutes, and we do have a wonderful device up there that holds us accountable to that, and the chair will allow that to govern the length of speaking. A speaker representing a group shall limit their comments to 5 minutes. And if you are here tonight and there is an organization that precedes you that has taken the 5 minutes, you will only get 3 minutes as you will speak as an individual. The representative shall identify the group at the beginning of their presentation. A group may have no more than one spokesperson. The total allotted time for public comments at a school board meeting is 30 minutes. Public comments are reserved for the public to provide input, and the board does not respond to comments, answer questions, or otherwise engage in discussions at this time. We're going to now bring our first speaker will be a student, Maya Brown.
Good evening. My name is Maya Brown, and I am a junior at EC Glass High School. I am currently enrolled in the new AP African American Studies pilot course that the school board agreed to last spring. I am speaking to you tonight to help you see the benefit of this class from my perspective. We have learned, for example, that we are the only school in the state of Virginia to have this pilot, and while that makes us feel unique and privileged, there are other more important reasons why this course is important. First, the people and events that are sometimes an afterthought in other classes are the focus here. World history classes, for example, have so much time and geography to cover that it's hard to really understand any one culture in depth. But in this class, we're learning about specific cultures and societies in the African tradition and their connection to our current life. More importantly, we're learning that Africa isn't one people or tribe, which is a stereotype of survey history courses. Whether we're talking about the Bantu expansion of 3000 BC or the rise of the Songhai Empire in the 1200s, we're learning that the people of Africa often didn't agree on things, and this humanizes the African experience for us. That brings me to my second point. While the transatlantic slave trade is a dominant theme and concern of this course, together with the structural prejudices created in this country over the centuries, AP African American Studies starts us in a time before all of that. We get to see pre-colonial Africa as a thriving, powerful, and important continent on the world stage, complete with scholars, scientists, and great thinkers who have contributed ideas and inventions to the world. This positive light is an important balance to later examples of chattel slavery, which African accomplishments were wiped from American textbooks. Finally, I want to tell you about the interactiveness of the class. We have no textbooks because the original documents of history are our guide. Just last week, we studied the Catalan Atlas, which is one of the first important maps of the world, made by a man who lived in Spain. His detail in drawing and describing Africa was our guide, and his work revealed both a rich detail of the land and betrayed his own cultural ignorance of African customs and traditions. We learn everything in context. We play games, we give presentations, we do not read from a textbook. It is important you understand what this pilot means to EC Glass and the future of Lynchburg City Schools. It's a new kind of learning, and I hope more students will be afforded the chance to take it in the coming years. Thank you.
Our next speaker will be Tayana Martin.
Good evening. My name is Ayana Martin, and I will be representing the AP African American Studies course. I'm a senior at EC Glass High School, and I'm also a student in the pilot class of AP African American Studies. I wanted to come to you tonight to express my gratitude for allowing us to adopt this class, but also to provide you a perspective of why I think this class is so important to our school and our community. It is no secret that LCS struggles to attract students of color to advance in AP classes. I myself sit in a number of AP classes all day long and see very few students who look like me, 4 or less in every class since freshman year. And while teachers, for the most part, are welcoming and excited for classes of diversity, there remains an atmosphere and a tone in upper-level classes that is unwelcoming to non-traditional AP students. Advanced in AP classes are not advertised the same to students and regular classes. Sure, it's a choice on paper, but students aren't stressed enough, not only the importance of the class, but how practical these classes are. When the classes are advertised, students of color hear AP and they think to themselves their lives will suddenly be consumed by schoolwork. And if given the opportunity, they can see that that's not true. This is why the new AP African American Studies course is so important. While I want to thank you for agreeing to adopt it, I also want you to be the vocal and visual about promoting and supporting the course when you are out in the community. But to do so, you need to see it through my eyes. So let me tell you what I see. When I was enrolled in World History 1, the course influenced the importance of Africa, and any given unit constituted a single lesson. The African unit took up 45 minutes of the school year. And when students asked why, the teacher replied, "That's what I've been told to do. I'm sorry." A 3 or 4 week course unit drawn together various cultures included 45 minutes, less than an hour, of the importance of Africa in that unit. That's 15 days of lessons and the history and importance of this entire continent taught in just 45 minutes. This is a silent lesson to not only Black students, but white students as well, that my culture and my history is 1/15 as important as other places like Europe. Since the 9th grade course, I haven't been given the opportunity to study Africa until now. I have never sat in a more diverse classroom until I stepped in AP African American Studies. There are kids, not only of all different races, but walks of life. And it's not only important to me. I look up at other groups of desks in the classroom and see students who have never taken an AP class before. I see students who probably wouldn't have given a college-level class a second thought, except it was AP African American Studies. They chose this class because it made them feel seen and recognized. And when I see them engaging and enjoying it and thriving, I smile to myself because I know in my heart that this course is the beginning of their AP career. We need more people to know about this course, and we need more people to take this course. I want to leave you with one last example about why this course matters so much to me and my peers. In too many history courses, the study of Africa starts at the transatlantic slave trade. The implication is that African men, women, and children don't warrant our study until they are brought to America. But for Black Americans, our history doesn't start when we were kidnapped, enslaved, and stripped of any dignity we've ever had. In AP African American Studies, we began in 3000 BC with civilizations and cultures that were already and still are touching every single part of this world. This is the vision of an inclusive school system that we want, and this is the kind of community that everyone wants to live in. Thank you.
Thank you, Ayana and Maya. We will now move to our next speaker is Melissa Chesney, who is coming as representative from Transportation.
Good evening. My name is Melissa Chesney, and I have been a school bus driver with LCS for 8 years. On June 7th, my colleagues and I in the LEA presented to this board a petition to request a collective bargaining agreement with the district on behalf of the Transportation Department. My coworkers and I, oh goodness, that's why you shouldn't do things on your phone, guys. My coworkers and I have been severely affected by the nationwide school bus driver shortage the last few years. However, on top of that, our neighboring counties have become far more competitive, not just in pay, but also in the day-to-day running of their departments. You see, while offering pay at half the going rate is a problem, the primary factor that our drivers, mechanics, and assistants leave is due to the continued management issues revolving around policy and procedures that are often changed with or without notice, depending on who is in charge. And when they leave, they do not come back. We are seeking this bargaining agreement from the district because we want positive change in our everyday work environment. We want consistency in policy and procedure. We want to know that what we want is being heard and taken seriously and not what someone else thinks we want. A few examples of what might be accomplished with a collective bargaining agreement are department employees receiving CPR and training every year, de-escalation strategies training every year, permanent routing across the city for general education transporting worked out with the driver's input, bus purchases occurring with input from our drivers and our head diesel mechanics, which would lead to major cost savings because buses that are adequate will be bought instead of ones that need to be retrofitted, like my bus that was 107 degrees this afternoon in the driver's seat. Continued education for diesel mechanics to become ASC certified, Master Diesel Mechanics, which is a program that we used to have that we no longer do. Routing becoming attached to contracts as all our neighbors do. And can you imagine how much smoother dismissal would be at the schools if the drivers were able to give input on how the process goes, how long it takes, and where we line up? These are just a few examples. This department has some of the most dedicated personnel in the division, many who have worked here 30 years or more. We love the children in this community, and we love what we do. We are simply asking to finally have consistency and fairness in our workplace and to finally truly be heard in that regard. Over the last 6 years, we have had 18 people in charge of us. And unfortunately, that has led over and over again to policy changes that do not always take safety into account. Our job is to safely transport students to and from school and school events. We want to work with you and not against you to make sure that we can do that every day consistently. We truly believe that a well-negotiated contract is the only way forward after so many failed attempts in the past to work it out in another way. I implore you all to vote yes on collective bargaining with the Transportation Department employees. Remember, 93% of the employees in this department are in favor of this agreement between us and the school board. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you so much. Our next speaker will be Andrew Glover.
Good evening, Lynchburg City School Board. I'm addressing you tonight in regards to the very serious matter you're entering into regarding collective bargaining agreements with the Transportation Department of the Lynchburg City Schools. Now, before I begin, it's really important to acknowledge an important fact, and that's that the Transportation Department is really screwed up. You just heard some of the challenges that they're facing. I've actually had the opportunity to meet with several of them over lunch to hear about the challenges they've been facing. It's been mismanaged, and its employees do not feel listened to. High turnover and revolving door of leadership has left the employees in a lurch, and it's not only affecting those employees, it's also affecting the community. However, rather than addressing the root cause of the problem within the department, as well as working with the employees to address their concerns, tonight, you are instead considering whether to formalize a contractual commitment that you have no chance of meeting in the current environment. Additionally, collective bargaining, by definition, sets up contractual obligations from both ends of the agreement that parties must adhere to. This degrades the teamwork aspect that should be at the heart of all public service and instead fosters a not my job mentality. Rather than having a workforce put forth their best effort like they are now, you will instead have a workforce that will be incentivized to meet the minimums of their contracts. What's worse is that these contracts frequently protect bad employees by instituting a litany of red tape and procedures to prevent the district from terminating or dismissing employees that need to go. Most importantly, if you go into a collective bargaining agreement, you are setting up Lynchburg City Schools as an organization for lawsuits from their employees within. This will cost Lynchburg City even more money and do nothing to actually solve the problems. The department screwed up, and if you enter into an agreement, you're not going to be able to meet those needs because you've been working here. So what's going to happen is that they're going to turn around, it's going to get dragged into court, and you're going to lose. That's going to cost an insane amount of money. Instead, there's other solutions at the table. So here's the deal, and you don't have to commit to the collective bargaining tonight. If you say no tonight, you can revisit it in the future. But if you say yes tonight, you're tying your hands to an agreement that you have no chance of meeting. Let's say no, let's work out the problems and build a team rather than a contractual relationship. That's what we want. Thank you.
Our next speaker for tonight is Dr. Carl B. Hutchison, Jr., representing the NAACP.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Vice Chair, members of the school board, our superintendent, and all of you. Normally when we come before a body like this, we come with some contentious issue. I represent the Lynchburg branch of the NAACP here in Lynchburg, which is the largest branch in this entire region of Virginia, including Danville, Roanoke, Charlottesville, Farmville, Campbell County, Bedford County, Amherst County. We work very, very hard to ensure that equality and equity become a norm and not a talking point for politicians. I want to commend the Lynchburg City School Board, our superintendent, and all of those who are a part, our teachers, our staff, our bus driver, who are friends of mine too, for all of the work that you've tried to do to make, even this year, as we come out of the, well, we're not completely out, the pandemic situation that we found ourselves in. I had the opportunity on the first day of school to go over to Hutchinson Early Learning Center. There were two of us there for Men to School. There was a policeman, and there was me. And a little 3-year-old came up to us, and we spoke. And he looked at us. Then he looked at me again, and he came over, he hugged me. And then when he turned me loose, he said, "I don't know you." I said, "Well, I don't know you either, but you're a fine young man." He was so happy to be in school his first year. On the other end, 3 weeks ago, I eulogized a lady who had lost her husband a year before and who died 3 weeks ago. She has a 17-year-old daughter at Heritage High School. And it touched my spirit. And I said to her, "We're going to stay with you and stick with you because she doesn't have the family system now to continue to carry her on as she had been. And so we'll sort of adopt her, foster her. She's a very bright young lady and wants to go further her education. And we're happy that she wants to do those kinds of things. The challenges that you all are faced with are many. But I also am grateful for the volunteer spirit. There is much discussion across the state about elected school boards. And I want you to know that the majority of the citizens of this city, as quiet as we sometimes keep, applaud the fact that you give your time and your service and your actual participation to ensure that this community is a better community. You've hired people like Dr. Waterkin to help move us along. You hired Derek Brown to help move us along. You hired Sam Coleman to help move us along. Those are just 3 people I know. And I know that that we all say there's a shortage of teachers. I came by to let you know there's a shortage of teachers, but there's also a shortage of mentors. And we need more mentors, male mentors in our community I say it again, we need more male mentors in our communities so that we can all grow better. I'm going to sit down, but I want to thank those two young ladies who came up because they caused me to reflect on 40 years ago. Because I taught the first African American History Studies program at E.C. Glass High School in 1969. But I remember, and I remember the good times that we had. Thank you again. Madam Superintendent, thank you for all that you do for our community. May God bless you all.
Brooke Carson from the LEA.
Hello, good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
My name is Brooke Carson. I stand here as the chair of the LEA Collective Bargaining Committee, but also as a community member and an employee. This is going to be my third year teaching in our district. As you remember, the LEA Collective Bargaining Committee came to you at the beginning of the summer with a request, a resolution requesting the power to collectively bargain. Others tonight will talk about the specifics of what that resolution entails, so I'll leave that to them. Instead, I want to talk about the people who set this resolution in motion, because, to be honest, putting together this resolution was a lot of work. I say this not to pat us on the back, but to highlight to you the passion that was necessary to bring this resolution to you. Melissa Chesney and her coworkers put in miles of footwork, all on their own time, to bring this idea to their coworkers and to work through the idea together to ensure that it was the best option for everyone. As a result, the overwhelming majority of transportation employees decided, after extensive deliberation and much discussion, to support collective bargaining. This huge majority is directly because your employees want to be successful. Everyone I've spoken to during this petition process has expressed to me that they want, above all, is a chance to share the expertise they have accrued working for you, with you, so that LCS can continue to provide for its students the stellar education the community has come to expect. Your transportation workers come to you in good faith, asking for a chance to be a part of the process and crafting the policies that govern their everyday lives. All they are asking for you is to show them the same good faith and to trust your employees to work with you for the good of everyone. We are not trying to tie your hands, but instead asking us to join hands. We do not bargain as a way to say gotcha, but instead as a way to build something better. Thank you for your time.
Our next speaker is Melissa Boatwright, if I have it right.
So, I'm gonna be honest, I'm completely unprepared. The whole reason I even came down here today was not for the school board meeting, but I want to speak on behalf for my son and other kids in middle school in Lynchburg as well. There is a very serious bullying problem, and it needs to be addressed. My son has been put out of school. A threat assessment was conducted, and twice last year, actually, and he's still not back in school. I did my part. I took him and I had a mental health evaluation done in both incidences. The first time he was cleared and sent back. The second time I took him somewhere different, and they said, hey, he does have some problems. So when this year, when I brought the recommendations and the things that the psychologist said needed to happen for his safety and everyone else's, and for him to thrive, and nobody's been looking at that. I did what I was asked to do. I feel like Lynchburg City Schools should honor that. I'm sorry, I'm really frustrated, but the bullying, I don't know, somebody just needs to be aware more of it. There's a lot of it going on in the middle schools especially. I don't have kids in elementary, so I can't speak there. But I know in the middle schools, it's bad. So, thank you.
Thank you. And our last person, if time permits, is a voicemail from Charles Mann, if I understand this correctly. Madam Clerk.
My name is Charles Mann. I live at 1120 Toledo Avenue, and I was just calling to ask the school board to support the bus driver's petition to collective bargaining. Collective bargaining is a fundamental right to all workers, and I believe giving the voice to the bus drivers will help stabilize and create a positive partnership moving forward. Thank you.
I want to thank all of those who have come in person to share during our public comments and our voicemail. All of these comments are important to the board, and board members govern themselves accordingly. Thank you very much. At this time, we're going to now move to Section F of our school board meeting, which is, we've had so much excitement tonight, but this is certainly always a highlight. And we welcome for the very first time tonight our student representatives from EC Glass and Heritage for the 2022-2023 school year. And we're going to begin with Cameron Flieger, who is going to share with us from EC Glass High School, followed by Kaylin Snyder from Heritage High School. Cameron? While this is loading, we want everybody to know we met with these two. They're already awesome. We're looking forward to a great year.
Good evening. We started the first day of school with our normal teacher tradition of sharing how many years they have been teaching. We were so happy to have all of our students, faculty, and staff back. Link Crew welcomed approximately 300 incoming freshmen on Monday, August 15th. This program is nationally recognized and is a transition program to help assist freshmen in their transition from middle school to high school. This organization is made up of juniors and seniors who applied and showed interest in helping grow and train to help these individuals. Our student council held their first ever annual leadership summit on June 10th. They participated in multiple team building activities as well as began planning activities for the upcoming year. Congratulations to the 2021 Crest. Their edition of the yearbook, A New Norm, received national recognition for their cover design. This cover will be featured in the Herff Jones Portfolio book. This will be sent across the nation to multiple high schools and middle schools as inspiration for their yearbooks. Congratulations to 2021 graduate Ella Rhodes, who designed the initial cover sketch and had the initial idea. A huge shout out to our wonderful EC Glass school counselors. They have all worked tirelessly the past summer, especially the last month, going into the school year. They have worked endlessly to make sure that all student, faculty, and family needs have been met. Another shout out to our wonderful, quote, Mayor of EC Glass. Shout out to our wonderful head custodian, Miss Greta Ford. Also a shout out to the rest of our wonderful Hilltopper custodial team. They also work tirelessly to make sure we have a healthy and welcoming, clean building.
Wow.
The athletic boosters are excited to announce the Rob Short Athletic Training and Sports Management Scholarship. This scholarship will be presented yearly to a senior who has shown dedication to the either athletic training or sports management. We are excited to announce that Leighton Wormser is the first recipient of this scholarship. The last 4 years, he was the team manager for the varsity volleyball team. Our athletics are off to a great start this year. Our varsity volleyball is 3-0, our varsity football is 2-0, as well as our field hockey team is 2-0. Good luck, our football team, as they host GW Danville this Friday at City Stadium. Thank you for your time, and go Hilltoppers.
Excellent.
Is he presenting for you, Karen?
What?
Is he pulling it up?
Yes.
While this is coming up, Caitlin's mother was previously a member of our board of outstanding contribution, and we're certainly glad to have you with her. And if you're watching, Katie, we're so proud of you and your daughter.
Thank you. Good evening. I'm Kaylin Snyder, and I'll be the Heritage Representative for school board this year. And quick shout out to my alternate, Faith Jacob, who will be here for me if I have to miss a meeting. Not included in the slideshow, but I wanted to shout out our faculty and staff who has been excellent in allowing the incoming freshmen and just the students coming back to school this year. They have been our counselors and especially our members of Beacon of Hope that are working with seniors already with scholarships and essay help for their essays. All right, next slide. Our sports teams, our fall sports, are in full swing. We won our first football game against William Fleming with a score of 32-28. Our volleyball team will have a match this Thursday against Lynchburg, and our golf team will compete in a tournament tomorrow at Bedford Country Club. We have recognition for some HHS students. Alasia Oaks, who graduated last year, was recognized at the August 23rd City Council meeting for her achievements at Heritage. She was valedictorian for the class of 2022, as well as being state champion for track and field 19 times. The Heritage Girls Track and Team Field was also recognized at that City Council meeting for their accomplishments last year. They won multiple state and regional championships. Our Heritage Theater program, Pioneer Theater, has begun the rehearsal process for their first show of the season, Night of the Living Dead Live. The first performance will be on September 29th, and it's going to be hosted outside in the courtyard at Heritage. Heritage has had their senior night last Wednesday, where seniors could meet one-on-one with scholarship coordinators, counselors, and members of Beacon of Hope. Next week, on September 14th, EC Glass will host a college fair where students from both high schools will be able to meet with college reps and learn more about scholarship opportunities. And that's it. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Cameron and Kaylin, for outstanding presentations, and I think that you're going to be very impressed, board, with their service and leadership throughout the year. Thank you both. All right. At this time, we will now, in section G, the school board chair recommends that the school board approve a motion to convene a closed meeting to discuss the following as permitted by the Virginia Code, section 2.2-37118, consultation with legal counsel. Is there a motion?
I'll move.
Thank you, Dr. Sinha.
Second.
Seconded by Dr. Carter. Any further questions or discussion? Hearing none, Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
School Board Member Ms. Preston?
Yes.
School Board Member Mr. Trost?
Yes.
School Board Member Dr. Sinha?
Yes.
School Board Member Dr. Brennan?
Yes.
School Board Member Dr. Coleman?
Yes.
School Board Member Dr. Carter? School Board Member Dr. Gupta?
Yes.
School Board Member Dr. Day?
Yes.
School Board Member Mr. Andrews?
Yes.
Motion carries 9-0.
Thank you, and we will now go to room 206, and we do want it public to know that our board has been so careful to make sure that we attended to all of our public matters without holding the public, and we're going to be right back so that we can continue, and you're please welcome to stay. Thank you. Thank everyone for your patience, and we will now reconvene. Chair now asks for a motion to come out of our closed meeting.
I so moved that we come out of closed meeting.
I'll second.
Moved by Mr. Tross, second by Dr. Sinha. Any further questions or discussion? Hearing none, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
School Board Member Ms. Preston. School Board Member Mr. Charles.
Yes.
School Board Member Dr. Sinha.
Yes.
School Board Member Dr. Brennan.
Yes.
School Board Member Dr. Coleman.
Yes.
School Board Member Dr. Carter.
Yes.
School Board Member Dr. Gupta.
Yes.
School Board Member Dr. Day.
Yes.
School Board Member Mr. Andrews.
Yes.
Thank you.
Carries.
We would now like for each board member to certify that the Lynchburg City School Board in its closed meeting just concluded that nothing was discussed except the matter of matters, number one, specifically identified in the motion to convene in a closed meeting, and number two, lawfully permitted to be so discussed under the provisions of the Virginia Freedom of Information Act cited in that motion. Madam Clerk?
School Board Member Preston.
Yes.
School Board Member Mr. Charles.
Yes.
School Board Member Dr. Sinha.
Yes.
School Board Member Dr. Brennan.
Yes.
School Board Member Dr. Coleman.
Yes.
School Board Member Dr. Carter.
Yes.
School Board Member Dr. Gupta.
Yes.
School Board Member Dr. Day.
Yes.
School Board Member Mr. Andrews.
Yes.
Motion carries 9-0.
Thank you, members of the board. We'll now move to Section H, which is our finance report. Dr. Edwards.
Sure. And presenting our July 2022 revenue expenditures and cares report is Ms. Kavasi.
Hello, good evening. As you can see, as to what's been, what's reported here, our revenue received to date, Dr. Brennan, you had noted this, that the, accidentally we put in the remaining amount to be received. It was discovered and corrected this morning that what has been received thus far is the $7 million at 6.7% of the total anticipated revenue. The expenditures to date, the actual expenses are the 2.6 at 2.54% of the total anticipated expenditures. The encumbrances includes salaries and benefits, which is 85% of our total budget. So thus, once you add that in, you come to 73.17% of our total budget either being expended or encumbered. Regarding the health insurance summary, we started with a zero balance, unlike previous years, because we had a negative number that we took remaining fund balance to cover. So we're starting with the zero balance. The premiums thus far for the month of July are $840,000. The claims exceed that by $234,000. However, not taken into account yet are any rebates, because those will actually show up in the next month. Additionally, the 10% employer premium has not been added. That'll be added in September. So right now, honestly, in comparison to last year for the month of July, we had a $600,000 deficit. So this year, we're at $234,000 deficit. The difference being last year, we did have that rollover funding. And once we add in that 10%, we are hoping to break about even. I would want to comment on the CARES funding summary. Also, you can see that the July expenditure report and revenue reports are added as attachments to support what we've said up here previously. But in the CARES funding summary, it was requested to just note those that have changed from month to month. So you can see over in the current status, anything that is starred is because it has changed, that the amount spent is what has increased. And specifically, I want to point out number 1 and number 4. There is a plan in place to fully expend those by the end of September, but the amendment has not cleared yet, so we have not made that change yet. So it's not going to show 100% until Christy Compton is able to submit that and say, yes, this is 100% of what we spent, but there is a plan in place. We're just waiting on the VDOE to approve that amendment.
All right, thank you, Director Kapazi. We will now ask if there are any board members that have questions at this time. Dr. Gupta, did you?
Yeah.
Okay, Dr. Brennan?
First of all, Mr. Crosby, thank you so much for updating the CARES report and having those updates, and thank you for the comments about correcting the financial statement. As far as the healthcare reserve or the healthcare account goes, I guess a couple of questions. One is that I think we were like $1.4 million in the negative at the end of June. can you explain a little bit about the funds that went to zero that out, number one? And then number two is the 10% increase in premiums that we've approved for this budget. That starts in September because that's the insurance contract? Is that when that occurs? Is that why we're waiting until then to do that?
No, honestly, because it was an oversight on behalf of the finance department as far as communication goes and everybody doing new things. And so it just came to payroll's attention. And so Angel Randolph and I were speaking about that today. And she's hoping to get into place for the 15th payroll, if not definitely on the 30th.
Okay.
But it was just an oversight.
Sure. Okay, thank you.
Go right ahead.
And then
I'm sorry, and the previous question that you had asked as far as we're not closing it out to any particular funds. It's just a negative at the end of the year, which would remaining fund balance from other lines will come in and capture that so that the total available at the end will be that positive number. But we're not closing it out to particular account codes.
Okay, thank you very much.
Dr. Gupta?
So we got, right now, we are in red by 234,000.
Yes.
10% premium increase is about 85,000.
Mhm.
And you said rebate will not be more than 10% of your total expense.
The rebate, I'm sorry.
You talked about rebate, is there some rebate?
Right, the rebates are depending on the types of medications that are, claimed and things like that. We get rebates on certain items from the health insurance company. So that goes against, any of our claims. But they don't figure those out. And basically, immediately they charge you $100, and then they come back and say, no, it's only 50. So now we're going to credit you 50 versus telling you only owe 50 to begin with. So, and that usually happens the month after.
So next month you'll have more clear.
Yes. Yes, and in fact, next month I'll be able to tell you, okay, so if we received any of those rebates, exactly what they were.
Because my concern is we got $2 million in health reserve. We took out $1 million or more this year. And if this trend continues.
No, we didn't take any out of
Didn't take
reserves.
any.
That's why we're starting with a zero balance, because we didn't take any out of that health insurance reserve.
Because this 2.234, if stays times 12, will deplete the whole.
Yes, well aware of that, completely understand. In fact, Monet Davis and I, she's our budget analyst, we were talking about that today. How exactly we budgeted for it, the 10%, and where there's potential, extra built in elsewhere, or not necessarily extra, but such as a health insurance. If we're charging a family on someone who only has single, because life events, and as we get closer to the end of the year, being able to say, okay, that's not changing, so we have extra built there.
And it's not, the issue is our health insurance is self-funded. So what we get is the money available for disbursement. What we are getting is about 800,000, and we're dispersing about $1 million in benefits.
Know what we're getting for the year?
It's about 800.
Oh, you're looking at just the month. Oh, okay, I'm understanding now.
So it's
Yes, yes.
So we're starting each month by going in deficit of this.
That's why we're already having the conversation of where to find additional funds to support that.
Which also means when we get to budget season, I'm probably bringing this back for another increase, which would be the third year in a row that we've had to increase it to try to mitigate the claims.
All right, any further questions or discussion on the finance report? Thank you. Dr. Gupta, please.
Going back to the CARES funding item number 7, we got $28 million for, it was for learning loss, right? And last time I asked in the retreat, is there a plan in place to use that money? Because the money needs to be spent by September 30th, 2024, but that's way out there. But the learning loss exists, and
I have to defer to Sam Coleman and Amy Pugh on that, because that is academic in nature.
we have the resources, there's no guidelines that all money cannot be used today, right? It can be used any time before 2024, September 30th.
And we have it allocated over the appropriate years to fund various things that we've identified before. Some of it is going to fund virtual academy. Some of it is funding our before, during, and after school achievement academic supports. So we had that in place last year. We have that again in place this year. So it's money that's been identified for certain programs and things that will support the learning loss, but it's over the course of those years.
Would it be possible to share the plan with the board, goals? Because when you're spending money, you got a goal. Fine with that, because it's pretty decent amount, $28 million for reduced.
Absolutely. We can share that with you.
What's the plan in next year? Short term is more important than long term. Because this thing needs to be addressed personally to me now, not later. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Gupta. All right, we will handle that and keep it under advisement. Thank you, Director Kapazi, for your report. We'll now move to Section I, consent agenda, and board members, there are several items here under the consent agenda: the minutes from the August the 2nd school board meeting, the minutes from our August the 16th work session. You will see religious exemption included, our human resources report, and a human resources report addendum that was added and so circulated to each of you today. The governance policy review, which is BBBB with student reps, the CAC committee membership, the Equity Task Force Advisory Committee membership, and the CTE Advisory Committee membership. What is your pleasure regarding approving the consent agenda?
I move that we approve the consent agenda.
Been moved by Dr. Carter. Is there a second to approve the consent agenda?
I second.
Thank you, Mr. Trost. There's a question, Dr. Day.
Yes, regarding item 5 about the governance policy review. When we
6.
discussed this on August 16th, we also talked about returning to this later in the spring. Does approving this tonight preclude that?
No.
In any way? Okay. All right.
Very
I just
good.
wanted to be sure we did remember that we wanted to come back to it again.
And Madam Clerk, please so note that. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Day. Any further questions or discussion? Dr. Gupta.
I just wanted to clarify, I see in resignations quite a few, about 4 or 5 very senior faculty. They are resignations or they are retirements?
Resignations.
Resignations.
Thank you, Director Scott. Thank you, Dr. Gupta.
And to follow up
Strauss?
on, thank you, follow up on Dr. Gupta's comment, I saw resignations, it seemed like we had some effective in, at the beginning of the school year. How does that unfold in that way?
So some of them that we received over the summer that we're catching up to actually getting their resignation in on beginning of the school year.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Trost. Any further clarity needed on any of the consent agenda items? All right, hearing no further questions or discussion, Madam Clerk, please call the roll for the approval of the consent agenda.
School Board Member Ms. Preston.
Yes.
School Board Member Mr. Trost.
Yes.
School Board Member Dr. Sinha.
Yes.
School Board Member Dr. Brennan.
Yes.
School Board Member Dr. Coleman.
Yes.
School Board Member Dr. Carter.
Yes.
School Board Member Dr. Gupta.
Yes.
School Board Member Dr. Day.
Yes.
School Board Member Mr. Andrews.
Yes.
Motion carries 9-0.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. And we will now move to our school board member reports. And if you do have a report, we certainly will be delighted that you would acknowledge as such. We do know that our Finance Committee met and elected a chair, and congratulations to you, Dr. Sinha, if you'd like to report.
All right, so the Finance Committee is, with the exception of Dr. Gupta, all new people pretty much this year. So we're all sort of the blind leading the blind, if you will. And you, against your better wisdom, made me chair. So hopefully we'll have a good year. So it was mostly so we met on August 30th. It was mostly an organizing meeting. We approved a chair and our meeting dates. And then we just discussed some goals for the year, some thoughts on maybe changing some of the finance reports to more visual representation, some charts and stuff that might facilitate understanding. Perhaps a quarterly review of unfilled vacancies and a reallocation of that fund balance and setting up some priorities or methodology for that, so we're not just doing it at the end of the year. We talked about during budget negotiations having greater budget detail so that we can do our due diligence, both as a committee and then when we make presentations to the board, and ultimately make a stronger case when we make our budget request to city council. And then we also talked briefly about how to consider what our role as a committee would be in this particular year, as somewhat unique because we did the last year the whole study, demographics, facilities, talk of possibly closing a school, building a school. That's still all up in the air. And what would be, how can the committee facilitate some of those next steps? And I think that's pretty much the gist of it. I think our next meeting is September 13th, I believe. So, no. That's our, no? Oh, okay, never mind.
That's our joint council meeting, school board.
That's why we met on the 30th. Would have met on the 13th, gotcha.
All right, well, thank you, Dr. Sinha, for sharing with us, and we're thankful for the committee and your leadership. Any questions for the Finance Committee at this point? And all board members, please be heard that any documents in that group will be posted on board docs for awareness of the entire board. All right. Is there anyone else under school board member reports that is prepared to give us a report today?
I handed out the agenda from Gov School meeting, which is tomorrow.
All right.
If you are,
I see it.
you really have a burning question, you can email it to me, and I'll give it to Dr. Smith.
All right. Dr. Sinha?
I have a report for Partners in Education.
Okay.
We meet on the first Thursday of every month. And the two of us are on that meeting. And so we meet with their board. Updates are the LCS has hired a new liaison that'll be part-time staff, Mr. Mike Barron. I believe starts tomorrow. The annual Partners in Education breakfast is back.
All right.
It will be held on Tuesday, November 22nd. And then we briefly discussed or put out there for consideration opportunities for our partners regarding potential lab schools, which is something Dr. Edwards and the division will be talking more about over the course of this year. And then it just being the beginning of the school year, renewing relationships, establishing relationships, longstanding, seeking out new partners, honoring emergency requests that our partners are really good at coming to the rescue to fill those needs. So we're back on track, and it's all looking pretty good so far.
Thank you, Dr. Sinha, for that report. And Partners in Education is so vital to what we do going forward. And Mr. Andrews?
Hey, Dr. Coleman, so I do have a report from Beacon of Hope. So met with Beacon of Hope staff on Friday, August 26th at their office on Memorial Avenue, and had an absolute blast. I can't lie to you. So we met for almost 2 hours just talking about kids and brainstorming ways that both LCS and Beacon of Hope could expound on the already established relationship. And they are doing amazing things with their Stay Close, Go Far program. And I expect they will make a presentation to the board in the very near future as we build on partnerships in education. So I have some ideas on partnerships in education, but I'll save those for an agenda discussion, and I will get with Dr. Sinha and just kind of talk about some of those things. And lastly, I would like to give my many thanks to Laura Hamilton, Legion McQueen, and Chris Glover for their hospitality and just brainstorming session. And in the words of my daughter, they had me hyped for education. So I appreciate them. So thank you.
Mr. Andrews, for the work you're doing in our schools. Dr. Carter?
The STEM Academy had their meeting August the 16th. This was primarily a reorganization meeting where Dr. William Wells would be the superintendent from Amherst. And also Chris Terry was elected chair of the STEM Academy, and Wyatt Terrence was elected the vice chair. This year they had 23 of the 30 students return, and I was so happy to hear that throughout the summer that Susan Cash, that she continuously keeps in contact with the students to make sure that they want to return, and to make sure that if they have any problems or needs that they can reach out to her. But 7 of the students, 6 of the students really decided they wanted to go back to their base schools. And they're also looking for, if anybody knows of any opportunity for environmental engineer to do an internship in some type of field like that, to let Mrs. Cash know that. At the Laurel meeting that was held August the 31st, there was a reorganization meeting there also, and Dr. Robert Johnson, second, he is going to be the superintendent in charge, and this has been his 3rd time. So he's been a superintendent for quite a while, his 3rd time go around. And Dr. Miller will be the chair of that organization, that board. We also were able to see some of the students, the new program SOAR, and I forgot what the acronym stands for. But they are doing well, and we're looking to increase the student in that program right now. We are still looking for teachers and all of the assistants that are needed. And it's really for the therapeutic transition students, students that really have a significant problem staying in their base school, but they're doing social emotional learning. They're in the general curriculum, so they'll take the SOLs and everything like that. And we're just happy and pleased for that. And I thought I had written that down. Sorry, I didn't do that. And so that's all.
Thank you, Dr. Carter. Anyone else have a report? I want to thank each of you for giving your reports and allowing me to do it that way this time, just to see who had what. Dr. Sinha, in relationship to Partners in Education breakfast, that is so encouraging to hear. And of course, what I want to bring up, we certainly have a tradition of where we go with that, and that's fine. But I do want us to continue, all of us in the LCS, to keep in mind Dr. Gupta's statement in the past about there's so many venues in our city that we can consider as we move this love around our community, and I hope that all of that will be given some consideration as we continue to move forward. Thank you very much. Dr. Carter?
I found it. SOAR stands for Successful Opportunity for Achieving and Resilience. And also, just one other important thing is that doing their audit, that there were no findings, so just want to do a shout out to Susan Landis for that.
Excellent.
No findings on that.
Thank you, Dr. Carter. We'll now move to Section K, Comprehensive Strategic Plan. Dr. Edwards?
Absolutely. So each month at the business meeting, we try to bring you an update on one of our strategic plan goals. And I have Dr. Derek Brown with me tonight to talk about strategic plan goal 1.7, which is in the student health and wellness. And Dr. Brown.
Thank you, Dr. Edwards, and good evening, members of the board.
Good evening,
Dr. Brown.
One of the things that I've always thought was very interesting is that, about board members, is that you do this on purpose. Appreciate your hard work, patience, a lot of time that you spend.
Thank you, sir.
Enjoy the time that we've got to spend together. I'm trying to share my screen right now, so if someone can give me permission to share, I'll put a brief PowerPoint presentation. I see we're moving into hour 2, so I'll be as brief as possible, if I can get this to work. And I don't know if we're going to have access to do that. So in your board docs, and if anyone is listening in the internet, you want to put the PowerPoint presentation up for me, I'm okay with that as well.
I can share it with Austin.
Okay. And he does have that, I believe, so.
Okay.
Perfect. And someone's doing something somewhere, so thank you. But tonight we're talking about item 1.7, and that's speaking to student wellness and the quality of life of our kids here in Lynchburg City Schools. And so that objective is really broken down into two different objectives. The first objective is talking to social emotional learning and character education programming, which is a passion of mine and something that I've always been interested in and dedicated my life to. And so our second sub-objective speaks to the enhanced behavior management and how we respond to trauma for our students and alternatives to suspensions. And great, we're already up. If you go to the next slide. So again, we want to focus on two main categories here, social emotional learning and character education, and then as well how we are monitoring our behavior of our students and how we're dealing with trauma and the alternatives to suspension. And we believe that the crossover and the one thing that can help us move forward is restorative practices. And that's something that we've spoken about and we'll be implementing and moving forward with as a division in our department. And another piece of this puzzle is positive youth development, which really is just a mindset shift from looking at students from a deficit perspective to a perspective of they have skills, they have attributes and things that are positive about them. And how do we specifically and intentionally develop those positive attributes in our kids so that they and we can see the best in them and making sure we're intentional about developing those things. And as Dr. Edwards has been so bravely leading us into our vision of resetting and refreshing this school year, we want to do the same with this part of the strategic plan. So while we have some objectives and some things have already been done, some groundwork has been laid, and I'm very appreciative of that in our department, we do want to reset and refresh with some other areas. And so this presentation just highlights a few quick things that we want to keep in mind as we're moving forward that our department will be focusing on. Next slide. And so what we have done with the first tier of looking at social emotional learning and character education, some of that groundwork's already been done for us, but we wanted to tier out the priorities for us moving forward as Department of Student Services. And so tier 1 is your tier that addresses all of our students, and all of our students should be receiving the benefits of this. Tier 2 is a smaller tier, normally around 15-20% of your population, student population. And then tier 3 is more intensive services that's more focused and narrowed in on students that have specific needs, and we want to try to address those a little bit more poignantly. And so as far as tier 1, when we're looking at social emotional learning and character education, we want to focus on restorative practices. How do we restore relationships? How are we really intentional about building relationships in our building? How are we empowering our students in our buildings to work with each other and understand the harm that they can do to each other with certain behaviors, and how do they restore those relationships? And that's a skill that's not just important in the school setting, but in real life as well as they're becoming citizens in Lynchburg. We want to make sure people know how to be civil and people know how to effectively advocate and make sure they're being good neighbors to each other. And so that's going to be really powerful, we believe, and help us move forward. We always want to be about the business of changing behavior. And so we never want to be in the mindset of we want to punish students or just give consequences, because we know those things don't always work. For some students they will, but for other students they need a little bit more. So we want to be really intentional. We also want to continue the work of our social emotional learning program, and as a quick review, we've found that Second Step is a really good program for our elementary schools. Our teachers are really enjoying it, our students are engaging with it, and so that's work that we want to continue. Something that we want to reset and refresh on is our secondary program. So we're currently reevaluating the curriculum and making adjustments, and hopefully we'll be able to have a more substantial push forward with our SEL program at the secondary level. For our tier 2 students, we want to focus on mentoring, so we're working with Ms. Reeves and her department to make sure that we have really good community mentors and groups in the community that can come into our schools, build relationships with our students, and help us move that forward. And then we want to establish meaningful service opportunities. It can be really powerful, and there's a lot of research around having students serve in their community and really give back to not just the community at large, but their schools specifically and in their classrooms. So what kind of service opportunities do we promote and provide for our students on that tier 2 level? And then as we want to focus in a little bit more to a narrower focus, we want to make sure that we're promoting community-based programming and opportunities. We have a lot of nonprofits in the city of Lynchburg. We have a lot of community groups and a lot of people that are doing really good work, a lot of colleges as well. So how do we partner with them to not duplicate work, but work alongside those who want to help us out? And peer mediation can also be a really powerful tool to help students develop those character and social skills. Next slide. So we always want to be outcome focused, and we want to make sure at the end of this we want to have some measurable things that we're looking at. And so these are things that are already in place, and we have a youth risk behavior survey and that we do every year. And so we want to look at that to see if we are having a decline in risk-related behaviors, and also a cultural and competency survey as well. Then we want to find agreement with the positive attributes at a 75% level. Next slide. And then focusing on behavior and our response to trauma and our alternatives to suspension practices. At the Tier 1 level, again, restorative practices, we want to keep reiterating that because, well, again, while we don't have any magic solutions, we always want to make sure that we're focused on the main things, and this is one of those main things that will help move us forward. It's really important to have behavior coaches as well. Some of our schools that have had behavior coaches in their buildings have seen a decrease in referrals and increase in positive climate, and those folks are able to do really amazing work. Our BCBA, our board certified behavior analyst, Rich Ferguson, does a really good job managing that team, and we want to expand those behavior coaches to all of our schools. And youth mental health first aid, that's our response to trauma. So as we know, coming out of the pandemic, a lot of students have had some trauma, and just in general, even before the pandemic, students experience trauma, especially when you are in a community with such high level of poverty. And so how do we, as a staff, acknowledge and identify students who are in a crisis and help them get the resources and the help and support that they need to overcome those crises so that they can be successful in the classroom? That's on a Tier 1 level. Our Tier 2 supports, we want to increase our therapeutic day treatment counseling and our alternative to suspension options and mentoring as well, another focus on mentoring. Alternative to suspensions is not that students don't get consequences, but they get consequences in a way that's more appropriate for their educational outcomes and making sure that they are still successful in the classroom, can restore those relationships when they are out of suspension, and when they come back into the building, we still have a better opportunity to not repeat those behaviors, and we've actually learned our lessons, and we've had opportunities for reflection, and we are our better selves when we come back to school after the consequences from the things that we've done. So that's something that's more to come and something we'll focus on a little bit later. And then our more focused Tier 3 is our restructuring our alternative to suspension programming and looking at how we can make sure that we're serving students and the needs that they have. And we want to make sure that we're trying to provide opportunities for them to learn skills that they need so they can be successful in the classroom, and make sure that they are learning from the lessons and making sure that they aren't just there doing work and trying to return back to a base setting without any type of transition plan or intentionality. And then we want to make sure that with our mental health safety, we want to create a safety net in conjunction with our healthcare providers in the community, making sure that we are taking care of all of our students' mental health needs, especially those who are non-Medicaid families. Next slide. So outcomes, we have a plethora of outcomes we want to look at for this, and there's a lot around the deduction or reduction of behavior referrals, number of out-of-school suspensions. We also want to look at our climate and culture survey again. Our school safety audit is something that we should review constantly, especially in relation to our behavior and our response to trauma. And then 100%, speaking to our students with special education, receiving special education services, we want to make sure that all the students that have a behavior plan in their IEPs and as an accommodation are able to have evidence of behavior management plans in place. And so that is the best I can do on a Tuesday in a short amount of time. So.
Thank you, Dr. Brown, Director Brown. Any questions that any members of the board? Dr. Brennan.
Dr. Brown, first of all, welcome back to Lynchburg City Schools. We're glad to have you.
Thank you, sir. Glad to be back.
Can you give us a brief overview about therapeutic day treatment that you want to expand? What do we have now, and what is our potential to expand that?
Right, and so Medicaid and some changes with the Medicaid rules have really decreased the opportunity for therapeutic day treatment, not just here in Lynchburg City, but across the state. And so one of the things that we don't have as much of are the traditional therapeutic day treatment models. And for those who don't know, they are licensed professionals who are counselors that work with our students in a small group setting or sometimes one-on-one. In a counseling room inside of the schools and or in the classroom. So if they're working on behavior management in the classroom or they're working on motivation and staying on task, that counselor may actually work side by side with teachers and a student in a classroom setting, transitioning through the hallways if transitions are an issue for that student. And so as we are trying to get back to providing a high level of support, that's something that we want to build out, and currently are reaching out to multiple agencies here in town to see if there's an interest in finding some creative ways, whether that's through grant funding or other options, to make sure that we're providing a high level of support for students that need those counseling opportunities.
Thank you very much.
Yes, sir. Dr. Gupta.
Following up on Dr. Bennett, is this in-house you provide, or you have referrals to Horizon and other agencies for therapeutic day?
Yes, yes, sir. That wouldn't be something that we staff. Our day treatment counselors would be part of a external organization that works with us, like a Horizon, like a Family Insight, like an Impact, some of those other counseling agencies that we work with.
So what happens to underinsured or uninsured kids who are in our system and needs that?
Yes, and so there are some creative ways to make sure that students that receive Medicaid are still getting services, and students that don't receive Medicaid are still providing services. And like I said, that's getting creative with some grant funding and other sources of finances.
So my point was, we don't leave those kids behind, right?
Right,
We do
exactly.
take care of them.
Yes, sir.
Insurance or no insurance?
Yes, sir. We want to make sure that all of our kids are taken care of based off need, not based off of what they qualify for.
Dr. Sinha?
Last year, and it was brought to our attention again today, and it also was something that we've already confronted as part of our discipline committee meetings with students, but the issue of bullying. It was particularly acute last year, and it's really inflamed by social media. That does not help at all. So could you just offer us a few comments about what specifically is in place to get students to understand how hurtful the things they say to people can be?
Certainly. I'd like to shout out our counselors who are on the front line of that work and do a tremendous job every single day trying to identify students and working with them. They do a really great job handling some really difficult situations. And you're exactly right, it is inflamed by a lot of social media, and that's never helpful. One of the things that I always like to ask students, as a principal, I would always ask them, why are you using social media? Why are you on Snapchat? Why are you on Instagram? And in the 10 years of building level principalship that I had, I didn't have one student that could give me a really good answer. And so I said, if you're on there to make sure that you're staying in contact with family members, or you're trying to learn a new skill or task, like those are great things for you to use social media, but you're doing it intentionally. If you're on there just because your friends are on there and you don't really understand or have a purpose for it, you can find yourself in trouble and find yourself following the wrong crowd and getting into some trouble. So we really want to partner with our parents and our community members to promote healthy social media etiquette, if you will, and make sure that we're being responsible digital citizens, and that's something that our department will push forward and try to work on moving forward. We also, with restorative practices, that's what that's all about, is building community and building relationships. And it sounds like it's another initiative, but it's really not. At its core, it's just social science on how to build relationships and be really intentional with getting people to understand how to be good citizens and how to be restore those relationships when harm is done in the classroom. And so we do think we'll see a lot of movement, and our students responding well to that moving forward.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Dr. Sinha. Any further questions for Dr. Brown?
Just a general question. Where are you with the finding alternatives to suspension?
Thank you, Ms. Preston. We are doing a lot of work on it right now. We are forming committees that will be working at the elementary and the secondary level to try to create these alternatives to suspension. We've had a lot of really great ideas already. We're looking at the data and the research and working with local and national resources to make sure that we are trying to identify a model that works best for Lynchburg. And I think that's really, really important. We can't look at, you know, a Baltimore or a Dallas and say, hey, that's great and that's going to work. We need to find something that works for Lynchburg, that's specific to our needs, that is doable for the system and the resources that we have, and being fiscally responsible at the same time. So we are doing, that's a top priority for us. I spent a lot of time, I was up here. Dr. Edwards has put me on a corrective action plan for working too much, but I'll tell on myself. I was up here Saturday and Sunday working on some of that work, and we're going to get it done. And I'm really excited to share that with you if I don't get fired for working too much first. Thank you, Mr. President.
Anyone else? Dr. Day?
So coming back to the social media issue, I think you explained to us at the retreat a few weeks back that there are policies about those devices needing to be turned off when students enter at least certain zones in the school. But I've also been told that the enforcement of those policies is suffering from lack of staffing. So can you talk about how effective or not effective those policies are and what needs to be done to improve them?
Right, and a policy is only going to be as effective as it's implemented, right? So you have to make sure that we're building that consistency and making sure that our staff understands the importance of it. It is challenging when you have folks that aren't in the building or folks that aren't in certain positions in place right away. But that becomes work that we do with our principals, and our principals have done an amazing job this year adapting to changes and making sure we're putting things in place and being creative and finding creative solutions. And so that is something that is an area of growth and something that we'll continue to work on. But we have our eyes on it, and we're going to make sure that we're trying to be as consistent as possible. And we've already done some work, some groundwork to make sure that we're consistent across all of our schools. But again, after being here for about 5 weeks, I need a little time to move that forward.
Is the policy the same in every school, or is it somewhat at the discretion of the principal?
Right now, it's at the discretion of the principal, so we do have some different policies in different places. And that's something that we're evaluating to see, you know, who's being the most effective. And this is kind of new territory, even though cell phones have been around for a while. I haven't found a school division that has, yep, we've got the right policy, this works, and our kids all follow it, and all of our teachers do it as well. So we're trying to figure out what works here in Lynchburg and move that work forward with consistency. Thank you for your question.
All right, thank you. Well, Director Brown, somebody told me once that work gets what it wants. And you're working hard. It's not only well said, but it looks like it's going to also be well done. So we commend you, sir. I share with Dr. Brennan. Welcome back, and you have our support.
Yes, sir.
Let's give Director Brennan a hand for that. Hard stuff, we're going to get it done. All right, that will now move us. We have no unfinished business tonight, Board, and so we will move to our Section M, which is new business. We have two items that will be for information purposes, and the third item will be for action. Dr. Edwards, on Title III federal grant presentation. Did I leave something out? I'm sorry.
had his hand up, I'm sorry.
I am so sorry, Dr. Gupta. Please go right ahead.
I just wanted to see if it's possible that this board will consider moving, and Dr. Coleman, you're there, but to move item 3 to item 1 and then proceed.
As an individual board member, you can make that a request if you would
That
like.
way, some colleagues may be waiting here and they do buses in the morning, so they can be free. It's up to whatever.
Is everybody okay? All right, does anyone accept in a friendly way the adjustment to move item 3 to item 1 for new business?
You just have a second in order to do that, Dr. Coleman, do you think?
I'll second it.
Parliamentarian.
We approved the agenda, so we would be amending the agenda. And so there would need to be a motion to amend the agenda with a second, and then we could carry that motion. There's a second, Dr. Gupta, I'm assuming you're making the motion?
I made the motion, I did
Dr.
not
Dale, you
second.
seconded to amend our agenda that we approved earlier to move M3 to M1, and M1 would become M2, and M2 would become M3. Any discussion on that motion? Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Scoop Up Member Preston.
Yes.
Scoop Up Member Mr. Trost.
Yes.
Scoop Up Member Dr. Sinhai.
Yes.
Scoop Up Member Dr. Brennan.
Yes.
Scoop Up Member Dr. Coleman.
Yes.
Scoop Up Member Dr. Carter.
Yes.
Scoop Up Member Dr. Gupta.
Yes.
Scoop Up Member Dr. Day.
Yes.
Scoop Up Member Mr. Andrews.
Yes.
Motion carries 9-0.
All right. So we are now on item 3, which is collective bargaining. And I do want to indicate to the board that on June the 7th, the Lynchburg Education Association, on behalf of its members in the Transportation Department, presented the school board with a proposed resolution seeking to institute public sector collective bargaining for all Lynchburg City school employees. While we have some concerns, we think that collective bargaining is an issue that needs to be addressed at this time, and we wish to take formal action on the matter. A resolution has been drafted, members of the board, into the larger community that states as follows. Resolution regarding Lynchburg City Schools employee management relations and collective bargaining. Whereas effective May 1st, 2021, Virginia law enables counties, cities, towns, and school boards to collectively bargain with their employees in accordance with the provisions set forth in the Virginia Code Section 40.1-57.2. And whereas the Lynchburg City School Board, the board, has not adopted a resolution establishing authority to recognize bargaining agents for its employees or to collectively bargain or to negotiate and enter into collective bargaining agreements, and whereas Virginia Code Section 40.1-57.2 further provides that for any school board that has not adopted a resolution providing for collective bargaining, such governing body shall, within 120 days of receiving certification from a majority of public employees in a unit considered by such employees to be appropriate for the purposes of collective bargaining, take a vote to adopt or not adopt a resolution to provide for collective bargaining by such public employees and any other public employees deemed appropriate by the governing body. And whereas on June 7, 2022, Carl Luce, president of the Lynchburg Education Association, the LEA, on the behalf of a group of employees with Lynchburg City Schools Transportation Department, filed a certification for vote on collective bargaining resolution to request that the board take a vote on whether to provide for collective bargaining and adopt Lynchburg Education Association's resolution for collective bargaining. And whereas the certification for a vote on collective bargaining resolution states LCS's licensed professional employees, specifically 90.65%, have requested collective bargaining. Licensed professional employees are defined as employees who require a license from the Virginia Board of Education or Virginia Board of Health. And whereas the board does not believe a collective bargaining unit of the Lynchburg City Schools transportation employees nor Lynchburg City Schools licensed professional employees have properly certified a request for collective bargaining. However, the board wishes to address the issue of collective bargaining at this time. And whereas the board finds it in the public interest generally and in the interest of Lynchburg City School employees to set forth its policy and position regarding employee management relations generally and relating to collective bargaining in particular, and whereas it is the goal of the Lynchburg City Schools to promote a positive workplace environment for its employees and open doors to management whereas employee concerns may be heard and addressed, and where it is further the goal of the Lynchburg City Schools to promote a dedicated and high-performing workforce that support the board's responsibility to students and residents of Lynchburg. And whereas the board recognizes that the establishment of reasonable means and procedures for employees to address the terms and conditions of their employment with management is essential to the advancement of the above goals. And whereas upon review of the collective bargaining request from the LEA, the board has determined that collective bargaining is not the most appropriate procedure for the Lynchburg City Schools. And whereas although the board has determined not to authorize collective bargaining, the board reaffirms its commitment to providing reasonable means and procedures that enhance employee participation in the resolution of matters concerning the terms and conditions of employment through the use and development of the Lynchburg City Schools human resources, policies, and procedures. Now therefore be it resolved by the Lynchburg City School Board, pursuant to the Virginia Code, Section 40.1-57.2, that collective bargaining is not authorized for Lynchburg City Schools, and no official, employee, appointee, or agent of the Lynchburg City Schools is vested with or possesses any authority to recognize any labor union or other employee association or organization as a bargaining agent of any Lynchburg City Schools, officers, or employees, or to collectively bargain or enter into any collective bargaining contract with any such union or association or organization or its agents with respect to any matter relating to them or their employment or service. Board, having heard the resolution, the chair would now entertain a motion to vote or approve the resolution as read.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to move that we vote to adopt this resolution as read.
Dr. Sinner has made a motion. Is there a second to that motion? Mr. Trost has made the second to the motion, and now we will entertain any questions or discussion on the motion. Dr. Day.
I have thought a lot about the benefits to transportation employees that's motivating this, the initial request that was presented to the board on June 7th. There are several costs and implications that also must be considered, and I would like to enumerate several of them briefly here. I estimate the cost to Lynchburg City Schools of implementing collective bargaining to be on the order of several $100,000 per year in administrating staffing expenses and legal consultation fees. That potential cost must be weighed against other competing needs for LCS resources, such as the pay increases for both teaching and service staff that the board has been trying to find ways to finance. Under Virginia Code, employees already have the right to form or join unions or other associations for the purpose of promoting their interests with their employer. And according to School Board Policy BGC-R, both a driver and a mechanic are included on the Superintendent's Personnel Advisory Committee, as well as 3 representatives from the Lynchburg Education Association. The initiation of collective bargaining would not of itself add to opportunities for transportation workers to present and discuss their suggestions and concerns. Primarily, it would add costly and potentially contentious contract negotiations to the relationship between the workers and the school district. And finally, we note that one specific desire expressed by transportation workers is to have their routes specified in their contracts. Routes and scheduling can only be determined based on the numbers of students enrolled at the various schools, information which is not available until just before the schools open in the fall. And transportation needs may change due to unforeseen circumstances as the school year progresses. We understand the desire to have that additional certainty written into their contracts, but it's simply not possible. For these reasons, I intend to vote in favor of the resolution that you read.
Thank you, Dr. Day. And any board member that would like to speak, we certainly want to give this opportunity. Thank you all, members of the board. Mr. Andrews, please. Floor is yours.
Mr. Chair, if I may, I have a few remarks regarding my position on the matter as an individual board member. To the Lynchburg Education Association and members of the Transportation Department, I hear you and I understand your stance. I've been a blue collar worker my whole life and still am. I've also stood on the side of the bus drivers, having had Miss Shelley Harmon be one of the best driving trainers I've ever had. I'm also pro-union, and I have been the president of a firefighters union in the past. So I know what it feels like to feel as if your concerns are not important. So trust me when I say that my decision to say no to collective bargaining was not taken lightly. Collective bargaining is an action when no other viable resolution can be agreed upon. And I sincerely don't think that's the case here. I don't think we are at a point where honest discussions can't be had. And by the way things look tonight, this is something that you care deeply about and one in which you should. Randy Nelson challenged me to solve the problem, and that's what my theme has been and will continue to be throughout my tenure on the board. So let's solve the problem. Let's find a viable solution for all parties involved, one that does not put LEA or transportation at a disadvantage, but one that will benefit the student, staff, and the division as a whole. And I know what you're thinking. I know what you're saying. Let's solve the problem. It's easier said than done when there are obvious challenges. But anyone that knows me knows I'm working in the trenches with you. I've been in the trenches with you since my first day, and that desire to make LCS better doesn't stop tonight. It's just a signal that there's more work to be done. It sounds like to me you want more professional development and training. You want input from fleet mechanics and the desire to be heard. So let's do that. So to the members of LEA and the rest of the workforce that has had this feeling of distress, let's figure this thing out. You know how to contact me. My email address is on the website. But I really want to work with you guys on trying to figure out the solution to this problem. So thank you. Appreciate it, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Andrews. All right, anyone else? All right, Dr. Brennan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As Vice Chair of the school board, I want to state that with the exception of our students, there's no other entity more important to the board than our teachers and our support staff of Lynchburg City Schools. And for that reason, the resolution regarding collective bargaining certification presented to the board by the Department of Transportation has resulted in a tremendous amount of time, discussion, consideration to make an informed decision by this board and by myself as an individual. I'm a strong advocate for our teachers and for our support staff. In response to this certification, I spent a lot of time since the passage of the legislation in 2020 reviewing information on collective bargaining, including articles sent by Lynchburg Education Association, talking with fellow board members, as well as meeting with LCS staff and supporters of collective bargaining to discuss the recent certificate requesting collective bargaining for the Transportation Department. As a result of these efforts, an informed decision on collective bargaining, I have decided to support the current resolution, and I do it for 3 reasons. Number 1 is the staff. I agree that the transportation employees should have a seat at the table to discuss pertinent policies that impacted the Transportation Department, as well as logistical decisions such as purchase of buses and equipment is very important, and I'm hoping that the current level of involvement by the transportation employees will increase as a result of future administration initiatives. I'm hopeful that this can be done without involving the bureaucracy and legal intervention of a collective bargaining contract. Number 2 is finances. As we all know, Lynchburg City Schools has limited revenue resources other than provided to us by the state and city, with the primary goal of educating our students. The implementation of collective bargaining of LCS would necessitate increase in our administrative staff to include, at minimum, a dedicated human resource employee, a dedicated financial employee, a dedicated clerical employee, as well as legal services and legal support. My concern is that the financial costs and the time spent by LCS administration will take away from the LCS budget and, more importantly, from the educational initiatives that affect our ability to address the challenges facing our goal of providing the best education possible for our students. The final point, the reason for supporting this resolution is number 3, is the students. As an individual board member, I want to do what's best for the children in our schools, and the current time, I think the best way to reach the goal for LCS board and administration to work with all LCS staff to provide the best educational programs to serve every child by name and by need to graduation. I'm optimistic that this can be done by us sitting around the table and not across the table. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. Anyone else? Dr. Sinal.
Well, others have spoken more eloquently than I ever could, and I agree with a lot of almost all of the things that they've raised. And I too want to be certain, and all of this discussion has further motivated us for transportation folks to have a seat at the table. A lot of the things that have been brought to our attention, I don't necessarily see where collective bargaining adds value to that discussion. We can solve these problems working together as partners. So in my opinion, primarily it might center around salaries or income, and there, again, because we don't have taxing authority as a board, it's very difficult for us in good faith to do any collective bargaining. And I want to assure you that, for example, when I, as part of the Legislative Advocacy and Community Relations Committee, attended our legislative advocacy where we actually approached our state legislators, they kept talking about increasing teacher salaries, which, yes, is very important. But I kept coming back with, don't forget everybody else who helps us run our schools. Because as important as our teachers are, there's everything else, the nutrition workers. And certainly, if kids can't get to school, there's no point in having teachers in the classroom. So we understand the vital, important role that the transportation department plays. We see that training, professional development, more decision-making, certainly say in what kind of buses are purchased or equipment, all of that makes absolute sense, and I hope that we can do it. And I also want to say I thank the transportation department because things, at least outwardly as a parent and hearing other parents talk, are going quite well, especially in contrast to last year, which was not a problem of the drivers, but more a software and data problem that made life miserable, I'm sure, for drivers and managers in that department. I'm hoping that those problems have been addressed, that there's only minor issues in that regard, and at least from my vantage point, and from what I'm hearing from people, it's a very different experience this year, far better than what was experienced last year. So I appreciate that you're struggling along with us and getting that all done.
Everything you just said, but okay.
Okay, I know.
Sir, so I don't know who you're talking to and what church you've been in.
Yeah, Melissa, this is very passionate, and we understand this, and I think by the end of our discussion, we're going to be all right. So I would ask, I realize that there is passion, but we do want to hear each of our board members out, and if we move to the point of taking vote, to do that, and then to have further insights. Dr. Sinai, the floor remains.
I have faith in the transportation department to work with us, to keep promoting their needs and concerns, bringing their issues to our attention so that we can address them. And we have discussed with the administration and amongst ourselves avenues to have those lines of communication ongoing and attended to. Thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Sinha. Any other board member, Mr. Trost? Or did we have to go back over this side? All right. Anyone else?
Ms. Chesney, I hope we hear you. You've done an outstanding job for your group in voicing the issues that are important to you folks. And I think everybody here has heard you loud and clear. We appreciate what you've done, and I hope you see the positive influence that you've made, that we are going to address the issues that you and your team have brought up. I agree, I'm going to have to support the resolution and vote against the collective bargaining for the same reasons that my colleagues have addressed, but that does not mean that we haven't heard you. By its very nature, collective bargaining is an adversarial process. We want to be on the same team with you. We need you on our team, and for the sake of the children, we want to be one big team. We don't want to be put into an adversarial relationship because we want you to be happy and have all the tools necessary to be able to do the best job that you can, and we're very appreciative of you. I, speaking as a board member, recognize the issues you guys go through, and I think there's a commitment on my part, and you've heard other colleagues say we're going to work very diligently and hard to make sure that we hear those things and address those issues. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Charles. Any further questions or discussion on this motion that is before the board? Dr. Gupta.
The problems are real, no doubt about that. Temperature of 107 degrees in a bus is not acceptable personally to me. A salary of $15 an hour, as I've said before during budget discussions, and you to take a 5% increase, comes out to about $1,000 a month. Whereas when you make 60,000, the same 5% is about 3,000. So there's inequity in the system, and we need to fix it. But having a collective bargaining agreement at this time, in my mind, will cause a financial hurricane, which we cannot handle as a district. Why not? Because we don't have any control over revenues. We depend on state and city to give us, and we go with a handout each year. Give me a little bit of money so I can match the salary increase the state is proposing. So knowing that, it'll be a disservice to all the employees of LCS, agreeing to a 4-year, 2-year, 3-year, whatever the contract is, and not knowing in good faith that you cannot fulfill that. Thank you.
Like the other board members, I think that we are all empathetic with the concerns that you have expressed. But it's not really an either-or situation. It's all of us together, working together to help to solve the concerns and the problems that we all see as impacting especially the people that are part of our transportation department. So please don't think this is us overlooking the things that you have expressed, because it is not that at all. It's simply, let's look at these things together and see if we can find some solutions that will benefit all of us, yourself included, our students, and the city of Lynchburg. So thank you for expressing your points of view.
All right, if there's no other board member that would like to discuss this matter, the motion on the floor that has been seconded is to adopt or approve the resolution as read. I'm going to now ask the clerk to please call the roll. If you vote yes, you are voting in favor of the approval of the resolution. If you vote no, you are voting that you are not in favor of the resolution as it was read. Madam Clerk?
School Board Member Preston.
Yes.
School Board Member Mr. Charles.
Yes.
School Board Member Dr. Sinha.
Yes.
School Board Member Dr. Brennan.
Yes.
School Board Member Dr. Coleman.
Yes.
School Board Member Dr. Carter.
Yes.
School Board Member Dr. Gupta.
Yes.
School Board Member Dr. Day.
Yes.
School Board Member Mr. Andrews.
Yes.
Motion carries 9-0.
All right, I would like the opportunity to make the following statement, and that is, while the school board has not authorized collective bargaining, we see the importance of the opportunity for administration and staff to collaborate. We want each of you to know that you have been heard. I had the pleasure of riding on the bus at one point with Ms. Chetton. I know the outstanding work that you are seeking to do. So we are proposing that on September the 27th, at the 3:30 p.m. meeting of the Legislative Advocacy and Community Relations Committee, that there will be 3 representatives that will be selected from the Transportation Department to meet along with 3 board members who sit on that committee and staff to have a discussion around the matters that have been presented in the unit, bargaining unit, and to seek to work together to resolve these issues, as board members have been saying, together. And so that is where we would like to go from here as a next step on September the 27th at 3:30 p.m. for those appropriate representatives to come together. And I believe that you will see that the resolve of this board and this administration is to do what is right by all of our employees in a way that is going to be beneficial for all. Thank you very much. At this time, if there are no other statements from the members of the board, we will now move into the items that have now been listed as 2 and 3, Title III Federal Grant Presentation. Dr. Edwards.
Good afternoon. Who's going to come to your meeting? We're driving buses.
Sir,
So we have the Title III presentation. We have Mr. Coleman here with us to go over Title III, which is service to our English language learners. This is a federal grant. And will Mr. Burrows be here, or is just Mr. Coleman?
It's just Mr. Coleman.
Just Mr.
And, yeah, I was gonna say, that's it. There we go.
Okay, the presentation should be coming up.
There it is.
All right, good evening to the board and those joining us virtually and those in person. My name is Sam Coleman. I serve as the Chief Academic Officer. I will be presenting for the board's information overview of our Title III grant programming. I'd like to acknowledge our Title III coordinator, Mr. Kenneth Burrows. He recently moved into that position this year after serving for 11 years as an EL teacher with Lynchburg City Schools. I'd like to start by first talking through what Title III is, and Title III ensures that our English language proficiency and academic success for all of our English learning students. The purpose of Title III is to help ensure that English learners attain English language proficiency and meet state academic standards. Under the Every Student Succeeds Act, school divisions must use their Title III funds to improve student outcomes, including academic achievement in math, reading, language arts, and science. So the federal definition of what we consider an English learner to be is displayed for your review. And in summary, they're students who are aged 3 through 21. They are enrolled in our school programs, and then they meet one of the following 3 criteria. Their native language is a language other than English, from an environment where a language other than English has had a significant impact on the individual's level of English language proficiency, or has difficulty in speaking, reading, or writing, or understanding the English language. The anticipated Title III Part A allocation for the 2022 through 2023 school year is roughly $16,000. That is based on anticipated level of funding from our previous year. That allocation might change once we receive our actual allocation from the Virginia Department of Education this fall. Just a brief overview of how we use these resources to provide support to our students. We use these resources to purchase software and programs for identifying and tracking the progress of students who participate in EL services. Also to provide professional development for the educators who serve students who have been identified for EL programming, and also to fund activities and programs specific to the achievement of EL students and their families. I should add for their families portion that there are funds allocated through our Title III dollars to ensure family and parent engagement is a part of our strategy for supporting our students. And in addition, I just want to share a brief overview of who makes up the students in our EL program that we serve. There's roughly 217 students who we've identified. Languages spoken by students and their family include Spanish, World English, Mandarin Chinese, Arabic, and then the remaining 12% are Swahili, Hindi, Northern Pashto, French, Portuguese, and Ukrainian.
Wow.
And if there are any questions that the board would have, I'm happy to entertain them. Otherwise, I share this presentation as information so that you have an awareness of how we intend to utilize and leverage our Title III allocation to continue providing service to our students.
Thank you, Mr. Coleman. This is your first time addressing us, and likewise with Director Brown. Thank you for the outstanding work that you have already presented to us, and we appreciate the report that you've just given. Dr. Gupta, did you have a question?
What's the next process? You'll be applying and you need a board approval to apply? How does it work?
Yeah.
That's correct.
Yes.
So could we move to make it an action item and move it tonight, or do we wait till next?
Is there any time sensitivity to this matter, Dr. Edwards?
We always will take approval. If we
Yes. The sooner it's submitted to VDOE and gets approved, then the sooner we receive the funds.
Typically, we bring things before this body for a second reading. If it is the pleasure of the board to adjust from that, I certainly will entertain the motion. Dr. Gupta.
I'll make a motion to make it an action.
Oh, second.
Been moved by Dr. Gupta and seconded by Dr. Brennan that we will approve this request for submission for grant. Any further questions or discussion on this matter?
Mr. Andrews.
Mr. Andrews? Did you have your, okay, thank you. All right, then if not, we will ask the clerk to please call the roll.
School Board Member Ms. Preston?
Yes.
School Board Member Mr. Trost?
Yes.
School Board Member Dr. Sinha?
Yes.
School Board Member Dr. Brennan?
Yes.
School Board Member Dr. Coleman?
Yes.
School Board Member Dr. Carter?
Yes.
School Board Member Dr. Gupta?
Yes.
School Board Member Dr. Day?
Yes.
School Board Member Mr. Andrews?
Yes.
Motion carries 9-0.
Thank you so much. There's further discussion. Dr. Gupta.
You know, Mr. Coleman, you broke up a jinx. Every time I bring an amendment, it fails.
We'll get back on track.
You've had two tonight or two that have worked. Yeah, but again, I do want to go back full circle. Thank you, sir. You handled a release in the public that I just thought was exceptional, and thank you for the leadership strength that you're bringing to this team.
It is my pleasure. Thank you, Dr. Coleman, and to the board for your support and your confidence in our leadership.
Thank you, sir.
Have a great night.
Thank you. Thank you very much. All right, item 3 now, LCS reset and refresh opportunities. Dr. Edwards, bring on yourself and Dr. Whitaker.
Okay, so we have the opportunity to participate in some pilots, some grants, and some think about at the infancy stage. And what we wanted to do tonight was just kind of inform the board of where we are, what we're thinking about. Some things are more timely than others. Some are very infant stage. But we wanted to talk about that in the spirit of reset and refresh, because we are trying to do everything that we can to provide our students with an enriching experience, while also looking at where are our needs, how can we best meet those needs, and move forward. So we have 3 items for you tonight. One is a discussion about the Department of Criminal Justice Services Security Grant, which Dr. Whitaker will talk about. The second one is Bridging the Gap Learning Loss Recovery Plan Pilot, which I'll talk about, as well as lab schools. So I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Whitaker.
Thank you, Dr. Edwards, and good evening, members of the board.
Good evening.
As we reset and refresh many of our operations over the next year, we're bringing some information forward to you about a funding opportunity that exists from the Department of Criminal Justice Services, so that we can think about how we secure and maintain proper safety in our buildings. We want to talk about this because there's a funding opportunity that we need to partner with the city on in order to apply for, and we just want to make sure you're aware of this strategy going forward. So as you are aware, for the last more than 2 decades, Lynchburg City Schools and the Lynchburg Police Department have shared really a wonderful partnership in placing school resource officers in our middle and high schools. And so we know also that those school resources have not been placed full-time in our elementary and alternative schools. And so probably at the inception of the program, that probably made some sense with the way the incidents that are occurring nationwide. But unfortunately, as we all know, there have been tragic events at schools with children of all ages. And so we wanted to explore the conversation about safety and security at our elementary and alternative schools, ensuring that there's a potential for dedicated staff to those safety and security positions. So in that form, in an ideal world, we would be able to have an SRO in every single building at the school for a variety of reasons. Lynchburg City Schools and Lynchburg Police Department have done a tremendous job of building a partnership and a relationship that ensures a really positive environment between SROs and the buildings, as well as the relationship between the schools and the students. And so in some school divisions, there's been some pretty significant challenges with their school resource officers. I think in Lynchburg City Schools, I hope that we all agree that focus has always been on primarily on student success in a positive, safe work environment. So while it would be ideal to have a school resource officer in every school, unfortunately, I think probably the only thing that's more difficult than hiring a qualified teacher right now is probably hiring a qualified police officer. And so unfortunately, the LPD has more than 24 vacancies. And so adding on an additional 15 or 16 potential vacancies would be very unlikely that they would be able to fill those positions. And so there's an alternative program called the School Security Officer Program, which is a little bit different. There's still very significant training standards. There are just some differences in the way the program is managed. The most important of which is that these school security officers would actually be employed by the school division. And they would have similar kinds of training responsibilities. We have conversations about whether they're armed or not armed and those sorts of things. Excuse me. But again, our focus is on maintaining the positive and educationally focused environment where we do need to have school security opportunities. And so there's a funding opportunity, a grant opportunity that's actually due Friday. So we wanted to make sure to let you know that we are working with our city partners to apply for that. The city actually has to apply for those funds. They manage the funds, and then we end up employing the individuals. So it's a little bit different than the way our SRO program works. But we wanted to make sure that you knew that these were also trained people. If we end up getting this funding, there's opportunities, I think, for retired police officers to serve in these roles in our schools. In fact, in the Virginia retirement system, if there are retired police officers, they can fulfill school security officer roles while still maintaining their VRS benefits. So it's a really important distinction between that and sort of other positions you might have in local government. And so there's a number, and many things that we need to work, details to work out if we decide to implement this program. Thinking about training opportunities, supervision responsibilities, their role in the school, et cetera, but certainly I think we would see their role as similar to that of a school resource officer, what we have in the middle and high schools. So we're looking at Hutcherson Early Learning Center, the 11 elementary schools, as well as our alternative programs for a total number of potentially 16 people that we're going to ask for. And the first year of that is 100% grant, and as we go forward, there would be some more sustainability requirements. So again, just want to let you know that we're exploring this and going after that route. It's a little bit different strategy than before. Again, there are many program responsibilities that we have to work out before we would implement such a thing, but again, we're going after it because it's due Friday. So.
All right, thank you, Dr. Wodiker. I here see Dr. Gupta, Dr. Carter.
So when we hire SROs, if something goes wrong, is the district liable? Because an organization in town just settled a liability lawsuit of accidental firing. And the organization ended up paying, or insurance company ended up paying.
Yeah.
So in case of SROs, the city's police has the liability or the district carries the liability?
So my understanding of the SROs is that the city would have liability for their sworn officers, their employees. Certainly, I think, I'm not an attorney, I'm still here. But that would be those kinds of questions we have to work out as far as the SSO kind of position.
Thank you, Dr. Gupta. Dr. Carter.
So who will be responsible for training the officers that they will be part of our system?
Yeah, absolutely. So there will be a very significant relationship between local law enforcement, whether that be the police department or potentially the sheriff's office, depending on how that will work. The ideal thing would be that we would have a relationship also with the Criminal Justice Training Academy, that we would allow them to be partners there. Again, those are costs that are associated with this. It's not me training folks. There will be law enforcement professionals being responsible for that.
For the training of these officers.
That's right.
The other thing is, will they be more involved since they're part of our system versus, will it be the same boundaries and interventions that will be expected, or would we call them more often or more readily to step in to handle a situation versus?
Right. I think one of the really critical things about the SRO program as it's been designed is that school discipline remains the responsibility of the school administrator, management of the school, all of those things remains the responsibility of the school administrator. And in my vision of that, in an SSO position, that would be very similar, right? So these are folks that actually do potentially have opportunities to arrest people, right? And so what we don't want to do is have an environment where a school security officer would be an enforcement of school rules, right? That would certainly still be the responsibility of the principal and other folks that are involved in that. We don't want to create this environment that the school security officer is sort of this enforcer. It's primarily focused on safety and security of the campus.
Thank you, Dr. Carter. Dr. Brennan?
And I understand that this is for information of the board, that I assume that we will submit, or the city will submit this grant, but just a couple of questions about the logistics grant, and the other, a bigger question, which is that logistical related, the grant, I think this is a one-year grant for funding. And if we were able to find individuals who would fulfill those, then it would then come across the city or the schools to then continue supporting that group.
Right, so typically there's, so there would be, it's a multi-year thing, so there's 100% the first year, and then there would be a certain percentage in the subsequent years. So the way that the grant is designed is that the grant actually is funded to the city. And so, you know, whether that's money coming from us or coming from them, that's a conversation for another time. But certainly, you know, the city would be the primary fiscal agent.
But over time, there would be the responsibility of someone to pick up the cost for that. So this is a short-term grant, there'd be a cost that someone would have to assume.
That's right.
The city or the schools. The other is, I just want to make a comment, because I think that this has been an attractive grant because there's funding for it and because having SROs sounds like a good idea, but I just want to make the point that, to my knowledge, if we're trying to protect the children in the schools, there's not a lot of information to say that having SROs in the schools protects them. You know, our problem with violence in our country is places other than the schools. It's most dramatic in schools and it's saddest in the schools, but we have synagogues and we have churches where this has occurred, and we can't put armed people in all those places. That really, I think, as Dr. Brown's been nice enough to hang around, I think we're talking about his help to keep our students safe as far as mental health issues and dealing with the crisis that students and children go through that, you know, that allows us. And then there's a national issue as far as gun control goes, which we won't get into discussion about. But I just want to make clear there's a significant information or concerns that by bringing whoever they are into the schools, that although we don't want them to be involved in discipline, the opportunity is there. And does that benefit of perhaps some safety outweigh the idea of bringing more SROs into the school? So I just want to make that statement, and that, you know, I think that's important for us to think about. This is not the answer. It's probably to protecting our society, in particular our schools, by bringing more armed people into the schools. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Dr. Brennan. Mr. Andrews, do you have a comment?
No, sir, not at this time.
Okay, thank you. All right, I think, you know, the hour's moving on. There's a lot to be said about this, but Dr. Edwards, this matter that has been presented, you all are handling that. And of course, if in fact the grant is granted, then there are serious items to be thinking about around sustainability and what we can do moving forward. So thank all of you for your comments. We're going to stay focused on how this is moving along and what we need to do. Any further pieces on that matter? All right, thank you so much, Dr. Waldecker and Dr. Edwards. And board, we have now made it to section N, superintendent comments.
Two more in there.
Oops, oh, Lord.
You're not getting
Bullets
away with
there.
it.
Who else is there?
Two bullets in that section.
Want me to bring up Sam so you can do
Yeah, where is it?
It's Bridging the Gap.
Oh,
So
on
under
your
the-
report.
yeah,
Go right
on the
ahead.
same report.
You all, please
So,
forgive me.
yeah.
I was trying to get y'all home a little earlier.
I'm going to try to do it too. So on August 23rd, Sam, Amy, and I had an opportunity to participate in a webinar put on by VDOE regarding Bridging the Gap, which is all about learning loss. This is a pilot program from VDOE, which they're combining the best methods and processes for using tools, training, and parent engagement to really focus on learning loss. They have partnered with the company SAS, and who is known for innovative analytics. And part of what they want to do is look at value-added analysis of student gain, academic gain over time. So this is at the VDOE level. We were doing a little bit of that internally, but this is going to be statewide. They've invited divisions to participate in this program. We did sign up to be a pilot. And what they're going to provide for us, in addition to some training, access to all of our data across whatever grade levels we choose or schools we choose to pilot in. Also, there's a parent training component. What do parents see? How can parents help their children? So this VVOS system, which is the VA system that's doing that, we will get our charts and graphs from. will also allow us to do customizable reports, make action items. It will predict student success on AP exams, so it's a predictor, as well as review performance patterns. And this will also not only come to us, but to the other teachers, which are the parents and family members at home, who are also helping their children. So we're at the infancy in that it's at a pilot level, so we did sign up for that, hoping to get more information very soon regarding that pilot.
All right, any questions on this, Dr. Day?
Is it all subjects or primarily reading or?
I think if they're using the statewide data, it might be focused on reading and math for right now, because that's the SOL test scores that they are going to have. We may have opportunities to expand a little bit, but right now I don't.
Well, and also what you described sounds like primarily either data collection or analysis of data. So it's not a program that's providing instructional materials or techniques or anything like that. It's more looking at what we're doing and what can we learn from it.
And what's working across the state. So it gives us an idea, similar to how we're using iExcel to kind of pick out some patterns and some growth things. And this will help us to align that, even though we do have a report on iExcel, and I think I shared that with you guys this past weekend, as a predictor for SOL test performance. This will also help us in trying to look at where those patterns are and how we can help our students.
I think it does look at instructional strategies and implementation and, instruction in the classroom, and provides some PD and some training there. It focuses on individualized education plans for those students who have large gaps, large learning loss. So it really focuses on what that individual student needs to learn, and focus on writing goals, achievement toward those goals, to close that gap for those individual students.
And so that's in support of the teachers. It's giving them some input on these students need this, those students need
And
that.
our principals and us
Okay.
as instructional leaders
And
at the
parents.
division level, and parents.
So
Okay.
it gives some data on teacher performance too, then, it sounds like.
I don't know that it gives us data on teacher performance, but it's best practice instructional strategies
Okay,
that
instructional
we
strategies.
that have been, researched and implemented, and so that we can, and in particular, the individualized education plan for these students.
All right, any further discussion on this second bullet? All right. Thank you. The third one on dealing with lab schools. Go right ahead.
Bullet on lab schools. So there was also an introductory webinar, and Reed, Amy, and I participated on that webinar on lab schools. We had also previously met with Emma Savage Davis from the University of Lynchburg, because we understood that there were some colleges and universities in our area that were interested in this lab school, I'll call it phenomenon right now. You all know we have schools of innovation, and several months ago, T.C. Miller and Jeff Guerin and myself were invited to participate in a discussion as they were talking about lab schools to see what some of the best practices are. So we got to thinking about this concept that is somewhat already here in our schools of innovation, but expanding it a little bit more to meet some of the lab school requirements, and taking a hard look at where our needs are. So our first thing was like, where is the greatest need for us? And it's in the middle school area, the middle grades kids. If you look at our test scores, you'll see that that's where our greatest need are. If you look at some of our behaviors, guess what? That's where our greatest need are. As we talk about the need for enrichment and gifted opportunities, middle school is where our greatest need is. And then we combine that also with a look into the workforce and where we're going with making sure that when our kids leave high school, our and beyond plan is solid, whether that's a 4-year college, 2-year college, military, entrepreneurship, or CTE, so we do not have any kids living life just over broke. We pulled that back to be an interest in our middle school program. So how do we get middle school students excited about careers, opportunities going forward? So our focus on middle school, as well as looking at, we have one middle school that's already a school of innovation. How could we combine these initiatives? And in talking with Dr. Savage Davis, who also has some interest from Liberty University, Randolph, CVCC, I believe Sweetbriar is also in there, and then we also made a contact with Virginia University of Lynchburg, VUL, as well, to try to get as much collaboration with us as possible. So our big focus is middle school. There is also one elementary school early literacy piece to it. That University of Lynchburg really talked a lot about that. So we also looked at one elementary school at a K-3 early literacy, because we strongly believe that if you can intervene and get kids reading early, and then we'll eliminate some of the problems that we see later on. So there are some themes that we are looking to try to apply for. There is a planning grant. That's the first level of this. There's a $200,000 planning grant. The grant's similar to the security grant, which is written or which is submitted by the city, but has collaboration for us. The lab school grant is submitted by the colleges and universities and also has collaboration for us. So those are two legs of the stool. The third leg of the stool would be involving businesses and nonprofits as a part of this. So go back to what I discussed with the middle schools. So we're looking at our middle schools and possibly building off the Dunbar model. Right now, Dunbar's main charter is in the cultural arts and in communications, and they also have that herpetology program there as a part of theirs. If we were to look at expanding that concept to the other two schools, and just briefly, and again, this is in its infancy, talking with the building leadership, Lincoln Elementary, we have a pilot grant coming up for a greenhouse partnership. So we're looking at community health and environmental sciences as possible focus for Lincoln Middle School. And that would also feed into some of our programs that we already have at the high school, our dental program, our nursing program, and expand in some environmental options, as well as some of the programs that we don't have that are offered at the CTE Academy. And then Sandusky, looking more at engineering and technology as a focus for that particular school. And again, expanding that into getting kids interested into some of the things, those of us who had, participated with the STEM Academy know that they have wonderful internships. Some of them are at CloudFit, and then they're into mechatronics and, the cybersecurity. There's a lot of things that our kids will have options to. So we were really looking at how can we provide these very enriching experiences at the middle school level that will solve multiple needs, provide opportunities for gifted enrichment, boost our CTE programs at the middle school, get kids interested in thinking about what is my life after LCS, but also generating a lot more interest in workforce development, which is something that's really thriving here. We hear how no one has workers, and we want to make sure that we keep our kids here. Combine that with some of the wonderful programs we have where we do have a beacon of hope that will pay for education, hoping that kids stay here and give back. So that is our plan. So we're looking possibly at 4 schools, 1 elementary, the 3 middle schools as some kind of conversion. Our next step is to get all of our partners together, and we're going to start with our college partners. And I did pop on the Partners in Education meeting to kind of float the boat, saying we already have partners in education who would be willing to do some of these things with us and possibly help with some of the guest lecturing and working with the students, providing opportunities. And when you think of everything that we already have, think about the 8th grade trip on the James River. We already have a partnership where kids are already doing things like that. I know that the YMCA Downtown Y is looking to build a teaching kitchen at the Downtown Y, which is just up the street from Dunbar, which we might be able to boost some of our culinary classes in that way. So looking at ways that we can partner with our local businesses and nonprofits, as well as get some of the expertise in from the local colleges to help our middle school kids enjoy and absolutely love middle education and get excited about high school. That's our main focus for our interest in lab schools. And again, The application, I do believe, for the planning grant, this is where you sit down and actually plan everything that I just spewed out there, is probably coming out early September. So we're going to be up against a tight timeline as well with doing this. I wanted to bring it to your attention.
Thank you very much, Dr. Edwards. This is wonderful. Dr. Brennan, then Dr. Gupta.
Dr. Edwards, just very briefly, 2 questions I was asked recently. And I know that it's a lab phenomenon, we know the details, but is the idea that the partnership would be in facilities, in our own facilities that we have, or are we talking about building or having a separate school that is the lab school? Is it partnership with?
Yeah, that's a good question, because the colleges do have the option to build or open a separate school, which we don't think would be beneficial for our students here. We already have schools, we already have children, we have children that have various needs, and we have the talent and expertise in this town to all work together. So we're looking at working with the existing middle schools, what we haven't worked out, and we're looking at how we do Dunbar. So Dunbar has a base school option and an invite option, and maybe we expand that at the 3 middle schools so that they all have a base school option, but also an invite option as part of this phenomenon.
And one follow-up, just quickly.
Please.
Yeah, I heard you, when you discussed this several times, you talked about a pre-K initiative also. I think the one remaining Bridges to Progress committee of the city is still looking at pre-K, and I think there's a representative of Lynchburg City Schools on that. Is that either related to this or separately still a significant interest by Lynchburg City Schools to try to promote pre-K education?
So we definitely are. We're sneaking in probably another pre-K3 proposal for another pre-K3 class. This initiative, although it's pre-K3 literacy, the particular building that we may be looking at is more K3, doesn't have because we don't have pre-K programs in all of our buildings. And we do want to make sure we strengthen the literacy K1 and 2, 3 as well. So not just limited to one building. And again, this is all planning grant pilot, and we're trying not to bite off more than we can chew, but really looking at where are our significant needs and how can our partners support us.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Brennan. Dr. Gupta.
You know, as I told Secretary Gudera, when the money evaporated in the legislature, none of these schools were visible, not universities. They were all gone, except for a few HBCUs. They say, we'll stick out with you, money or no money. Having said that, this program provides about $14,000 a student. $14,000 a student. So you multiply with $1,000, 1,000 students is about $14 million of revenue. Potentially could come. 1,000 is a very high number, could come potentially to the school district. So my request will be, hopefully we'll stay in the driver's seat as LCS of this program, not let it hijacked just because there'll be a lot of financial interest. I love to see people saying, I'll do it from the goodness of my heart, and no revenue sharing. LCS, you keep all the money. You see what I'm saying? We'll do it just because we want to grow these kids up, and Lynchburg City Schools, you keep all the money, the state will provide you.
Yeah.
Any further discussion on this? I think that I want to thank board members that are working on this, and Dr. Edwards for your openness for it. The concept has been around a while anyway. It's crystallizing into something that could benefit us in that one elementary school. So I certainly support it. If there's nothing else to be said on this matter, I believe now, unless the board member will tell me otherwise, we can now move to section N, the superintendent's comment.
And I will keep them brief. I just want to give a special shout out to Nathan. I think I called him Nathaniel, but Nate Dillard, who was our student who joined us here from Scholarly Identity Institute, who, when I tell you, when he approached us at the dinner, it was just eye-opening that this is what we want for our young men, right? We want them to advocate for themselves. And I forgot the question we asked him. It was something like, well, tell us what you want or what you need. And he was like, well, now that you asked. And we were like, okay. So, and I called them up on Friday and invited them to come here, and they absolutely just said yes. So That's really what Lynchburg City Schools is about. Real kids, real parents.
Yes.
Showcasing what we're doing. So I'm very grateful to them. And he is just one of many students. And we had our student reps here tonight who did a wonderful job. And I just celebrate them because the kids came back to school with so much energy and positivity. And just excited about school. And everything that we're trying to do here with all of the programs and everything is to keep that excitement and enthusiasm going. I appreciate all of you for spreading out and in the school and going to various events and meeting with our partners and just really telling the LCS story, because we do have a good product here. We are in the midst of back to school nights. I was unable to get to the block party for Bedford Hills. I was taking my last child to college, but both Sheffield and Heritage had their back to school nights. If you have an opportunity, please go. It's another example of we love our families, and the teachers are just magnificent. The things and creativity that they're doing in their classrooms, I was just sitting there in awe of some of the things that they were explaining to the parents, and we've only been in school for a couple of weeks. So if you have the opportunity to go to one of those, absolutely do that. And we're just so very proud of everyone and our staff for making this year's opening a dynamic school opening. I am so grateful for that and their hard work, and I just want to say thank you to everybody.
Thank you, Dr. Edwards, for the great work that you are doing. All right, we're now going to deal with our board comments, and we're going to start with Mr. Andrews, go to Dr. Day, and work our way around. Mr. Andrews?
I don't have any comments tonight other than just thank you to all the parents out there. Since we're a few weeks into the school now, and they're our largest stakeholder, right? And so just want to say thank you to all the parents for sticking with us, and I would encourage you to keep staying engaged with your child's learning. And if you have any issues or concerns or need anything, please reach out to your principals, and we can have those conversations and go from there. But just once again, thank you for everything that you do for your kids.
Thank you, Mr. Andrews, for reading to the kids. I think that that's really nice. Thank you so much. All right, Dr. Day.
I don't have anything to add.
Thank you, Dr. Day. Dr. Gupta.
I just wanted to thank Dr. Edwards. You take hits from everybody, but I think you have stabilized the ship. I can see that. And the Finance Committee last time was an example because it was a dialogue, not just dog and pony show of presentation. So that's a change.
No,
And so you should be commended and publicly told. So things are happening. Just stand behind her, give her some time to make it much better than what it is. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Gupta. Thank you very much. Dr. Carter.
Just want to do a shout out to a lady that I met at the Wards Road Kroger, and I had an LCS t-shirt on, and she says, I just want you to know that a lot of us are thinking and wishing you all the best. And Dr. Hutcherson came tonight, and that's just so amazing. We always, a lot of times you just get beaten up, but it's just great to know that there are people that are thinking of us and wishing us the best. And also just a shout out to Alicia Oates for just her wonderful, how wonderful she's done, and just wishing her the best at Stanford.
Wow. Thank you, Dr. Carter. Dr. Brennan.
I have no comments, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Brennan, for your work. Dr. Sinha.
I just want to thank the community between the Lynchburg Education Foundation and all the wonderful programs that they support and sponsor with significant amounts of money and dedication. And then our partners in education who come through in all kinds of ways. Sometimes money, but a lot of times just personal involvement and investment of time and stuff. It's really encouraging to see how our community pulls together for our public schools. So I'm really grateful for all that.
Thank you for saying that, Dr. Sinha. Mr. Trost.
I've been patiently waiting to give special recognition to John Collins and his IT department, because I had the pleasure of attending the Tech Extravaganza 2022. back in early August, and I got to tell you guys, the excitement, the passion of our teachers was, it'd make everybody proud. I wish all of the citizens would have been able to be there and just see the passion and the desire for our teachers to do the best for the kids there. One thing in particular did something called the Demo Slam, where each person, there was an opportunity for the teachers to present for 2 minutes, something they learned in the seminars, whether it's technology, something that would just enhance the teaching experience. I learned some things I want to use in trial. So, I mean, it was just fantastic, and the passion, again, blew me away. I want to thank some of our local sponsors for that extravaganza, the Belvac Company, Iron and Ale, Wheeler Landscaping, LU, Spa 4109, Day Spa and Salon. Really appreciate it. Knocked it out of the park. I hope to see everybody there because it was a great time. And above all, the teachers got recertification points or scores, credits. So I invite everybody to attend. It was just a fantastic experience. And thank you, John and crew, for doing it.
Thank you, Mr. Trost. Thank you for bringing that up. I feel the power from your comments on that. And thank all of those who made that happen. All right, Ms. Preston.
Thank you for the opportunity of serving on the board. This has been a real learning experience for me, and it's made me realize even more how fortunate we are in Lynchburg to have all of the advocates for education and for our children that we do have. And it takes a village, and we're all part of that village, so thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Preston, and I just want to build on that. We're less than 90 days in, and our 3 new board members have been exceptional in terms of your engagement. All of us 9 coming together. You all expect me to say this, but this board is a quality board. We know how to agree, disagree, go through whatever we go through. But I am amazed at the quality that each board member brings. These are some tough things that we have to deal with, and we're dealing with them. And we are moving Lynchburg City Schools forward. And this has been an excellent, I know you don't give a 100-day report so much, Dr. Edwards, but this has been an amazing start to the school year, and I think we are tackling these issues, and tonight was exceptional. At the beginning, I don't think I've seen anything better, and I'm thankful for that. Now, we're going to move on and have our informational items. You will notice that we will be meeting with our colleagues from City Hall, and that is going to be September the 13th, and we'll be well ready for that. The venue is set, the Lynchburg Regional Alliance, and that's going to be a 2-hour meeting from 4 to 6, so block your time out. Dr. Day, did you have a question on that?
Yeah, is there some kind of an agenda for that we will be able to see in advance?
Absolutely, there is an agenda, and we met with council leadership, and we had a great meeting, and all of that will be shared if it hadn't already.
I believe it'll be public on Thursday, or it'll come out on Thursday.
Okay.
And we've understood your sentiments, et cetera. So Dr. Day, you will have that agenda. And it is a meeting that we advocated for, that we both will have opportunity to be able to share and reflect around the table together. So I think you will be pleased with how that has been put together. All right. The 15th, new board orientation. The 20th is our work session, and please, board members, weigh in on that as we get ready for that work session. We're going to Charlottesville on the 21st, and that's going to be a wonderful governance training opportunity from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. And then on the 27th, Dr. Edwards, we may or may not need to look at the time on that, but the Legislative Advocacy and Community Relations meeting, and that's going to be real important. We'll convene, you'll select a chair, and then we'll really want to kind of figure out how we can work through what we mentioned earlier in our meeting, and I think we can. Further new board training, and then on October the 4th for next month will be our school board meeting here, and we'll govern ourselves accordingly. If there's nothing else to be said, this meeting is adjourned. Go and continue.